Good to go? Okay, so welcome to the ordinary meeting of the Operations Committee on Tuesday, the 18th of March. Health and safety, we've got our exits to the back and to the sides as usual. Apologies, not actually apologies, we've got leave of absence for Ross Barnes and for Councillor Dave Hislop, which is a shame. I wanted to thank Ross for lining us up to this point and giving me a good example to follow. I thought Ross's knowledge of the topic and the area was great, but importantly, I think he set a really good tone to the meetings where we could all talk freely, and that was great. I'd like to continue that. Just bearing in mind that we keep our discussions through the chair, not across the floor sometimes. Conflict of interest, have we got any of them? We're recording, being live streamed. Urgent business, any urgent business? No?
No, I don't have any urgent business, but may I just will need to leave the room depending on our timing. I'm representing our district for the submission for the local government water services bill at 12 o'clock today, so I will need to just exit. Probably Hamish will be exiting as well.
We have to leave at 10 to 12 Murray.
Correct. Yeah. So yeah, if you can just excuse us in the interim, that'll be fantastic. Thank you.
A small matter that it's not urgent business, I'm advised, but we might just bring it up at action sheet time to see whether or not we tagged something, and that was around the big trees at Hanmer on Queenborough South. The minutes of their previous meeting. We start for corrections on page 5 and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. I'm happy with that.
Happy to move. It's an accurate record, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Secretary. So, is there any matters arising from those minutes? Go back through again, page 5. I had one on page 5 was just a question around the wheelie digger. If we had a response back from that.
Well, Mr. Chair, the wheelie digger we've gone out for expressions of interest. We've received, and you'll have seen that through a lot of local newsletters that went out. We received an overwhelming response of people wanting to be involved. I think Charlie can give you the numbers, but we're talking certainly over a dozen had an expression of interest. So he's spoken with majority, if not all of them, directly to explain a little bit more. And he sent out the actual the work performer or the instruction, and we're looking for scheduler rates. So I think they're supposed to come in by the end of this month, if not around about the 20th or something. Charlie can give you. But so once we get that back, we'll be getting into it. But yeah, overwhelmingly positive in terms of local contractors want to be involved.
Yes.
Page 6. Got a couple here that we don't need to worry about them now because they'll pop up later on, but just to tag Stanton Road, will no doubt get filled in later on, but that's all machinery busy on site there, so something's happening there. And what looks like a very good result that Kerry will no doubt fill us in later on was the tiny homes result back. I don't know that fill us in there.
So, Mr. Chair, I wonder if, so there's nothing in the report really about Stanton Road at this stage. So Stanton Road, at the moment, we're looking at configuring the weir that needs to do the diversion, because as you know, the whole point of the works is the water will run from the higher land, and it runs down the eastern drain and eventually works its way into the eastern drain over that side of the town. But before it gets to a certain point, it will flow into the swamp. So that was what the consent was all about, was having it as a diversion. So the weir is there to build up to a certain height, so the water will continue to flow into the swamp until it becomes a certain level, then it will flow over the weir into the eastern drain. So that's the works that are going on at the moment. So there's no, I don't think there's anything else in the report that talks about that yet.
No, well, that puts us in the picture now, that's fine.
And the other point that you mentioned about the MB Tiny Homes, Kerry isn't here today, so Glenda's coming in to present. But nonetheless, in terms of that one, we've received a determination and it ruled in the favour of they were considered dwellings, so they have to go get a building consent. However, there was some issue, they took issue with the way that the notices were written. So there's a little bit of learning, internal learning that we're just going through at the moment to make sure that we understand that. And then, so if we come across any more, we'll make sure that the wording is correct.
So just through the chair, can I just clear, is that the wording that we had written on our determination of whether it was determined as a tiny home or a dwelling?
So when,
Is that what
yes,
it's
so
saying?
when we write the notice to fix, there is some regulation or some legal jargon that we've got to write. And some of that I think from memory, the basis of it was that we didn't explain the reasons for our decision.
Oh, okay.
So we said this is our decision, that we think that we consider that they're a home and it's subject to building consent, but we didn't explain why. And it was because they weren't easily separatable and some other things like that. So it's just an internal learning that we're going through. I mean, it's probably tripped many a council up that are going through exactly the same problems that we are.
Right.
I did think that the article that came out in the media was fairly fulsome, and in particular the photographs that painted 1,000 words to me. It was good. Going back to page 7 and page 8. Page 9.
I just asked a question around how the works, I guess Charlie might give us an update of the Rotherham South. Will that be covered off with Charlie this afternoon or this morning, do you think? Or, you know, it raised a lot of concern amongst the locals. Certainly I was receiving a lot of calls. Those calls have seemed to be significantly less or zero, but I just wondered how that's, if there's any update on that.
Madam Mayor, I won't steal Charlie's thunder.
Okay,
But,
we'll wait until then.
But I'll probably set an expectation now that it's not particularly great news, and that there has been delays, and the contractor is in the throes of putting together a request for a time extension. So those phone calls may start up again. So we're just making sure with the contractor at the moment that they're very clear on the issues that this is causing us. And we want to be very clear that they are pulling out all the stops to ensure that they can meet that deadline before we're willing to consider an extension. So
that was beyond the 5 weeks? Or,
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So that will be finished next week, it's the
Yeah.
5 weeks.
so yeah, so
Okay, and we'll have that discussion later.
yeah, so Charlie can give you the detail, but we don't necessarily, I think we're due to get the request by the end of today, explaining the specific reasons and the extension time period. But we know we know it's a very sensitive issue for us.
Vince.
Just on the Life Road, I had a telephone message yesterday about the state of the road from, I think it was Mark Davis. It was hard to hear, but saying that the roads, and it's saying this road part of it is in really bad condition and they have to use 4-wheel drive to drive on it because there was meant to be 40 mils of rain tonight. And parts of the road are down into the clay and it's just so sticky. You've got to be in 4-wheel drive to actually, with a bit of rain out the other day. He said it's taking the ground, it's the school bus or something, and it was quite treacherous. I just thought that came to me yesterday.
Mr. Chair, I think the best thing to do is raise that with Charlie and we'll get somebody else going.
Yeah, I just wanted to say.
Okay, that's cool.
Just either yourself, Vince, or Dan, on page 9, the trees on the record line, is that, we're gonna have a wee look at that, with it triggering that?
Oh, Mr Chair, we'll wait for Alex to come in and see if he's got an update for us on that.
Page 10. 11. 12. 13. All happy? So if we move on to our monthly report for a page, which is.
Thank you, Mr Chair. So, yeah, so on page 15, just a monthly summary. I mean, we're right into the throes of everything now, so everybody's running around, pretty busy time of year for us. And there are a couple of interesting points going on, namely the Amberley Beach re-nourishment at the moment. If anybody's been down to see that, that's there's some pretty extensive works going on. I've received a letter from the Amberley Beach Ratepayers and Residents Association yesterday saying that they were really pleased with the work and the work's going on. And there's just some hangover questions that they've got about what the end result's going to look like. So they're meeting with Dan Blair later on this week, just to close that out. But they're sort of getting into gear now, ready to celebrate the completion of the works. So I think there's going to be an invite of several people down to the local community hall. So that's really pleasing to see. That I mean, it's largely led, whilst we're facilitating it, largely led locally. So I think it's just another really good example of council and community coming together.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's not an easy process. This is a huge body of works. It's potentially vulnerable as well, but I think the staff and community have worked really well, considering it is quite emotional for people as well. So yeah, thank you.
I just wanted, it's really, one of the things I just keep an eye on is, because this is very much a volumetric report, as you know, it just talks a lot about the numbers of things that we do here and there, and just because, it's very key for me that the district sees that if they don't see us in their area, it doesn't mean to say we're not doing anything. So we're doing a whole raft of work around the place. But I often keep my eye on the number of books and the number of electronic issues that the libraries do, and just, we can often get carried away talking about the infrastructure size of the organisation, but the reach that the libraries have, I think is just fantastic. And I think it's getting close to 110 physical or electronic issues through the year to date. So, I mean, it's a very valuable service that's certainly used by a lot of people. Another piece of work that's been ongoing, as you'll be very well aware of, a number of months, in fact, this goes back a year now. I first stood up in front of the Balmoral Water Supply Committee, and we talked about how they can, what the things that they'll need to do to become protozoa compliant, like all of our other schemes, and the options that are on the table for them were wholly unaffordable. I mean, they can literally 10 times the price that they're paying today. And there's some farms up there that pay, they get 20, 40, 60 units of water. So we went away and we had a bit of a rethink about what we could do there. And Hamish and I met with the regulator, Te Mata Arawai, and we raised with them this issue. I had subsequent conversations with them about this must be an issue right across the country. And what we were doing is trying to look at the acceptable solutions, which is the rules for small rural schemes. And is there something that we could do in the area that could lessen the compliance loading on these schemes? So at this stage, I'm pleased to say that they are starting to release guidance now, which does lessen that burden on rural supplies. And it is looking like it's going to start to become an affordable option. So we're just waiting for a little bit more information coming, but it does look like we are going to be in a position where we're going to have an affordable solution for the Balmoral scheme, and that might then stretch across to some of our other schemes as well to bring down some of those operational costs there. So that's one pleasing piece that we're keeping a keen eye on. In fact, Kirsty and Alex actually went to a meeting with Te Mata Arawai and other like-minded councils in February in Christchurch and met with them and really pedalled hard the case. And they also raised the point, and I later did as well with the regulator, about under the current regulations, whoever provides the water is considered a water supplier. Now that might sound clear and obvious in its own sense, but we've got, you know, AIC, which is an irrigator, and they've got water right dispersed across the Ymiri Basin. If we were to take water from them, then they would fall foul of all the rules as well, because they would be considered a water supplier. So I've had that conversation with them, and they're now looking at how we might be able to divorce the two. So if we could take water off them for the further reaches of the scheme, where people either we can't deliver water to, or they're on their own supply, but they're being affected by nitrates or something like that, there is a possibility in the future that we could take water off of AIC, because they only have consent for irrigation water. We could then take and deliver water to that property as a water supply. So another positive step forward, I think, particularly as the regulations say, we've got to be aware of all other water suppliers in the district, so private suppliers. So yeah, another positive step forward. So I'm reasonably happy in that space at the moment that things are moving in the right direction. And finally, the point I make on is Happy People Road, and the team are very conscious of trying to save money and look for new and different approaches to doing work. And Charlie can explain when he comes in about the line stabilisation they've done, rather than the extensive dig outs that were that they were originally looking at on that road. Brought the price down considerably. So that's me for the summary, apart from the fact that you'll see on page 16 in significant safety events, you'll see that we had one, and that just refers to the Balmoral incident, the tree, that everybody's sort of well aware of anyway, so I don't need to dwell on that. And that said, I'll hand over, Mr. Chair, to Naomi.
Morning, Naomi.
Hello everyone. And what are the customer services? You seem smaller today.
Yeah, there's a couple of bodies absent.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to have gone through this report, a few little highlights in here. So just looking firstly at the compliments and complaints that we've received. So the standout in the compliments area was the transfer station in the last month. Lots of great comments in there, everything from the actual operations down at the transfer station through to the egg recovery process that's been happening, and the team working with the egg recovery. And up in Hanmer as well, so it's not just here, it's been around the district, so nice to get those kinds of compliments through there. There was a complaint that you can see down there under driving, and I've left it in, but actually I almost felt like taking it out, because it was a complaint about a man who saw a white ute go across the railway crossing, and he was behind there and the lights were flashing and a white ute went ahead. And then he came around the corner and saw a white ute parked up here, which was a council ute. And he came in and complained that that ute had crossed the railway crossing, and it hadn't at all, because we've got the E-road data for it. And so we were looking into that, but we couldn't go any further with where that was. So it's in here, but we look into these things. So I guess that's what we're just sort of showing we look there. There's a new thing down the bottom of page 18, and you'll see this as reopen CSRs. Now, this comes back to our Chief Operations comments before about getting data and giving you some more metrics to have a look at things. So we're flying this one and seeing how this goes for you. It's particularly, as you can see at the top of the page there, it's about looking at the reopened CSRs as a measure of customer satisfaction. So the theory behind this is that when the officers believe that the job is completed and it is closed, and you'll see those in the metrics from the earlier report that was presented. But sometimes we get a call from a customer going, actually, I'm not happy with that. That shouldn't be closed, and I think this store needs a fix. Now, that's when they're reopened. And so that's showing you the measure down there of the number of those. So it's not high, It's and it's definitely trending downwards. And we're looking at some actions around that. I'm not sure if you would like to comment any more on that area.
No.
No, okay. Then we'll move on.
Well, what I will say, Mr. Chair, is that I mean 99.6%. Yeah, I get the fact it's trending downwards, but of all of the people that come and raise an issue with us or request a service, to only have 2 out of all of that high volume, saying that they're unhappy, probably take that. I mean, we're obviously striving for 100%, but not far off Six Sigma.
Because sometimes you see the odd one that's been open, they never get closed and they never get unclosed, or they just sit there.
Yeah.
You know, and I just sit there and I think, well, if it's too hard to do, you need to say to the complaint, well, it's just too difficult. But just leaving it there and just glide on for years and years. Sometimes you think, what's the point of it?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I keep an eye on a lot of those and I go through that data and look back and see which ones are open, and there are some problem children amongst them. So that's actually really hard to deal with. So most of those ones actually sit within the regulatory and compliance area, and they might be a complaint about a legal building or work on there, and the team keep them open so that they don't lose them. But it's a lot of those things are a long process. Some of them are like a year, 18 months, even those kind of processes. So they do stay open as they keep them on their radar. Now, when we move to our new system from Magic to Datascape, there may be another way that the compliance team look at putting those and moving across, like our roading team will move things to a maintenance schedule. Once they've dealt with it in a certain way, they'll move it across to that. But compliance don't have that kind of module, so they leave it as that to make sure that it's not lost. It's not closed, it stays there and it's worked through, but it throws out my statistics. So I would quite like them to find a new way, but it's actually really realistic. So it's one of those ones where we look at it and go, it's not just all about statistics of like a quick close. In fact, we want a solution, and that's what they work through, and some of them just take a long time.
From what I understand, the new solution that we're moving to has a neater way of reporting on these things. So as Naomi says, things like a water connection. So people apply for a water connection, but they know that they're not going to connect for a year, 18 months because they're not building their house. But so that sits there. But in this new system, it will be hived off and be treated completely differently. So you won't see those. So the numbers, I'm expecting the numbers of CSRs to drop. And at some stage, you may well say, well, they dropped. And we need to be able to work out, you know, what are the different holding pens for all these different workloads. And they'll probably come through as a report at some stage. But certainly, Naomi's team do harangue the other teams in terms of you've got all these overdue CSRs, what's going on. And also Caro is also looking at anything that's over 10 days. And we've constantly got a running commentary on what the cause of those are.
It's a good point. So my customer services team, we get reports every day of what's due, what's overdue, and if it's due, then for those who've got it due, we'll get a reminder email going, what's up with this? You've got a problem with it, go see Naomi.
Some do disappear and they've never been fixed, because I'm going back a while to Main Power put in a obstruction in one of our drains on the intersection of Minor Road and Homeview Road, and there was CSRs put in at the time, but nothing's ever happened. And they know they're not recorded now, but this obstruction's still there. They put a concrete sort of they must put wiring, and then they just put like a weir across the drain, and it blocks it, and it actually floods back further and it goes through under this house. But we haven't had a rain for a while, so I suppose the next time we get a high heavy rain, we'll get a CSR again about it. But it's being caused by structures that have been put in by the power company, but nothing's ever been done about it. You know, I just see it there, just and you think one of those, it disappeared off the radar, but nothing, you went past and looked at it, was physically still there, and you think, is it too hard, so it's just been left?
Well, yeah, Mr. Chair, and that one specifically, like many well, I guess they just appear like they just get forgotten about or just closed because they get too hard. But in some instances, particularly, I think that one, from memory, that was under the electricity regulations. They had all entitlement to be able to do what they did. Then the question then becomes to us: do we do nothing? Can we do something, or is the solution just unaffordable? So that's the constant tension that the officers are going through when they're making decisions. And in this instance, I don't know what drove the outcome, but it may well have been in order to build a new drain around that structure, might have either undermined the structure and starts to become unaffordable. I don't know, but that's one of the reasons why we don't always fix everything. But we certainly communicate back with should be back with the person to say this is the outcome that we've got to.
Yeah, I was in Cheviot yesterday and Mr. Barnsby came in and spoke on this issue, I think the chap we're talking about right now. And I said, my last words were, what can we do to help, and he said, it's probably a main power issue because they put the obstruction in the road in the first place, which has caused it made a problem for him, so we had that good discussion. He was articulated his worries, which were totally respected and warranted, but he also probably also articulated the fact that there's some, it's just a frustrating situation which becomes a problem for us and him, but actually almost it's not our problem in the first place, and that doesn't mean we don't need to own it and show some respect to the person that sees the frustration. You know what I mean? And I think that's what he was articulating to us yesterday.
Yeah, I'm just thinking is, where does the liability lie if the house gets flooded? The insurance company come looking for people. Is it a lines company or is it us, because we've got a drain, they've gone and put a weir over it and blocked it. And the water then floods up further up the road and goes under this house.
Yeah, and sometimes we don't know where liability lies until it gets tested. And sometimes we have to take that risk on board. We just accept that's a risk to us. But then if something were to happen and the insurance company were to come after us, then our view is main power's caused it, so we try and step out of the equation. But because we're probably the corridor owners, we probably get dragged back in somehow. So not every issue that we come across has been tested and we've got an answer for. So
yeah, and that certainly was the tone. And if you want to follow that through, Naomi, Joan took some notes. So that was it was great that he was able to come in and just share his story, but through that dialogue. And so I'll leave it with you.
I'll follow up on that. I'll be hoping that it's
It's all right,
But I'd be hoping that
just
we
was asking
contact
about
back to the electric company to actually, for them to realise they've caused a problem and what are they going to do about it?
Yeah, and maybe that's where our advocacy might sit, that it's become a problem. We're now alert to the problem. How can we manage our risk by saying, hey, informing the main house. Yeah. So, and good to have those discussions.
As long as we've got a paper trail showing that we've tried to do it all we could and main power's come back with some regulation.
Sorry, Fiona.
Yeah, and I think this is a perfect example of being able to have people come to us and then brainstorm together on ways forward. But the other thing I'd like to do is just congratulate people on the work they've been doing on the CSR system, because probably pretty much my whole time on council there's been tweaks and bits and pieces, and I think this new form of recording is very helpful, but I understanding that going through to a new system and that some things are regulatory and they throw things off, it's great that we're working our way through so that we can have a better overall reading of the data. I appreciate that work. Thank you.
Could I ask, when we've got different services crossing over like this, is there a hierarchy or an order of, I'd imagine if we were going to put a drain over a main power cable, that'd have something the same, is depending on who owns the corridor, surely there's a pecking order, if you like, as to who asks who, if that's okay.
A pecking order, there are different laws which allow different things to happen, so there are other utility operators, whether it be power or comms, they are allowed to do certain things through law in the road corridor, and we have very little opportunity to say no. So they can just do these things. But it's interesting, as Vince raises about, well, yeah, so the law says that they can do something, but can they do something to the obstruction of something else or to the detriment of something else? So, and again, we don't have all the answers on all the, we have a pretty good answer on the things that we encountered in the past, but not in all scenarios. So yeah, so we might be the landowner, but there is law allowing other people to operate within that land.
It just would be nice or courteous, if nothing else, that you got a bit of a look at what they were going to do or plan, before they just, you found out later.
Yeah, well, they should be telling us, and they should be requesting a corridor access request, which and Maypower would have done.
Right.
But that would have come in and just said, look, we're gonna put a new pole in, and it probably wouldn't have said we're gonna put it in the middle of the drain
No,
and put a big concrete structure in to hold that pole up.
yeah, and to know what the obstruction of the
Yeah.
land adjacent, it's
Yeah.
always ripple effects, isn't
Because
it?
if we'd have seen that, we probably, well, I'd like to think, that someone would have said no, because this probably goes back 4 or 5 years, doesn't it?
Yeah,
That's good, thanks, Naomi. I think we've at least put some flags around it now.
Okay, so just continuing on here, you can see our borrowing stats, and well over 10,000 books going out every month, and over 600-700 of other items as well. And then with the electronic on top of that as well, you can see we're still quite a busy little library service. Looking down at our phone calls, we changed the phone call thing now to show you it compared to last year. So we're just trying to show you what's actually going on with that, although I can't see what's quite happening with some of the orange ones that have shown up on there. Just to see our trends, I think it's just quite useful to see the trends on what's actually happening. From what I'm sort of generally seeing is that phone calls are slightly down, trend year upon year, but then there's changes to that when you have a flood or you have a weather event or something. And that was the same with the emails should be also showing a comparable, but they're just actually showing, I've got to go back and check what's happened with these graphs. That's actually just showing the weekends versus the weekdays, which of course you'd expect to see the weekends and after hours being lower. We'll actually get your year upon year on that one showing up, which is again, we're showing down there with Snapsen solves. And it's an interesting one with the Snapsen solves as well, sometimes lower, sometimes higher, but we know that we will be changing over to the new antenna system as well. We're going to probably have a time where we've got both happening so that we can bring people off one and onto another and still have people.
Just want to explain the Snapsen solve is going.
Yes, I think I did that last month or the month before that Snapsen solve was going. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So so with our new system, it has a new system in it called Antenna. It's app-based. And the advantage to us, besides the fact that it comes in the system, over Snapsen Solve, is that it allows us to push messages out as well using the app. So if we have we need to turn the water off for an event, at the moment we go out and we ring fence and we send out all the emails and texts if we can. This gives us another tool to go directly to anybody who has Antenna on their phone. They'll get an alert showing that's actually happening as well. So that's we're not able to do that with Snapsen Solve. Everything else we're able to do that we get in from Snapsen Solve, we'll still be able to get in with Antenna. So it's just using another tool. Just have to teach people what it is rather than Snapsen Solve, which is in the title. Now it's like Antenna. But we'll do a big comms thing around that as part of when we bring it out. But we'll keep Snapsen Solve until that. Snapsen Solve comes at a cost as well that we used to not have to pay too much. At the moment we still don't, but it was a Canterbury-wide thing. So and in fact most councils in New Zealand and Australia have Snapsen Solve. In Canterbury, the fee structure for us was that ECAN paid 50%, and then the rest of it was divided amongst the other councils. And last year ECAN spat the dummy and said, actually, we're not getting 50% worth of the calls or the emails or the snaps that are coming through. So we don't think we should actually have to pay that amount. So therefore, we're either going to pull out or reduce our shares. So it hasn't happened just yet, but it will, which is why it's also good for us to get over to Anteno before we incur a much higher cost on that. They were wrong as far as they were right and they were wrong when they said they don't get a lot of the things directly to them. So when somebody puts in something like a water, like a river issue or a noise complaint or something, some of those will go directly to ECAN when they've been categorised as this is a regional council issue. But a lot of those things actually come to us and we deal with what we deal with and either deal with things or refer them back. So they're not getting their referral back necessarily through a Snapsense solve. So they're not necessarily getting their statistics quite accurately. But yeah.
Well, let's hope our award-winning history with Snapsense solve carries through.
Well, this is true. This is true. I think our team does a really good job with that, and our comms team do a really great job of promoting that it's out there too. So, you know, we have this high use of the Snapsense solves compared to a lot of councils and the high resolution of those as well. So our customers like it.
That's a dumb question. Is Anteno an app that we get on that?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, you download it as an app, same as you download
Yeah,
Snapsense solve.
Yeah.
And then you can do the same thing.
So that's live now, is it? No, you'll let us know where it is and we'll all
Absolutely.
load it.
As soon as it's live, I'll let you guys know ahead of time, but we will be loading it out and comsing the bejeebers out the room. So, and on those Snapsense solves, you can see that the most common again was damaged roads, followed by water leaks and some dumped rubbish, general roads. Hanna and Amberley are the most commonly pointed locations, but of course they're not supplied as well. Okay, some of our, just on our last page here, just over this, what's this waiting? Just so you know, there's a couple of exhibitions that have been on at the library. So we have a couple of gallery spaces, both at the Amberley Library and Hanna space. There's been a felting exhibition up at Hanna, and there's been some beautiful things up there. And down here in Amberley is Tivaive, and that is a Pacific quilts and also some gorgeous stuff up there. We've had Bruce Cole, who's a New Zealand author, come and actually have a chat and hold a talk there about his latest book, which is the start of a trilogy based in Karamea. So that was an interesting one. And the other thing that's just on a university student who approached the library and asked for information on the treatment of soldiers at the Hanna Springs back in the day, the soldiers block. So that was, the librarians love that sort of thing. It's like, yes, let's dive into this and see what we can find out. So that one we've highlighted because they actually managed to find a book that had a whole lot of information in our local history collection. Coming up next month, just for your information, Bugs in Your Backyard. We've had a similar one in the past. We had the Creepy Crawlies one. The kids love this one. I think their parents not so much, but that'll be a fun one. And also the arts showcase is back on again next month. So just highlighting those, and I'm sure we'll be talking a lot more about them in the coming months. So unless there's any other questions.
Thank you very much, Naomi. It didn't escape me that the compliments were way up and the complaints were way down, so your team's tracking well. Thank you very much.
Just as an aside, it's interesting what we've just talked about today, because I had to write my column for the North County News this week, and I focused on the ops agenda and highlighted the customer services team and the amenities team, and pulled some of the data out to put in that column, because I just think, you know, we often talk about, no disrespect, roads and water, you know, but actually it's the full suite of offering is really important, and so they're the two. So just at the moment.
Talking of water, if you bring Alex to the table, because we still want to hear what you've got to say, Alex.
That's right. Yeah. I want to lose friends.
Quite a big brief. Good morning, everyone. I'm Alex McEnon. I'm the operations manager for Three Waters, and as usual, I'll be talking about the Three Waters bits and pieces. And I can direct everyone to page number 22 of the report. So just summarise our routine maintenance program across the network, which is largely on track. We are slightly behind on our point of supply inspections, and that's for a variety of reasons, mainly it's to do with resource. And right at the moment, our point of supply inspections have concluded, pending water meter reading right across the district. So we hope to have that finished in the next couple of months, and then we will resume the point of supply inspections. Our traffic management plan is underway, and we will hopefully have the entire team retrained, which is a regulatory requirement that happens once every few years. The Hurunui number 1 water treatment plant is now fully operational. It's been supplying safe drinking water for about 3 weeks now. We've had a few bits and pieces happening in the plant, and we sort of optimising and fine-tuning the plant, and we're looking to lift the boil water notice as soon as all this site snags have been addressed, which will probably be in a couple of weeks or so. We are slightly behind on the development of the routine maintenance program for our stormwater discharge consent, and we're looking to address that in the next couple of months.
Sorry, to interrupt. Just one above that, the customer water outage map that we talked about, whether that crossed over to the Waimea or to the Ashley scheme, is that any further, or that's in place now?
Yeah, so I was going to talk about outage map a bit further on in the report. So the outage map currently encompasses all of the Hurunui drinking water supplies. So if we have a water outage, then the map is updated to reflect the area of the outage, and that includes the Ashley water scheme. So we have currently got, I guess, some rules in the background that once an outage is of a certain length, then we will go out and notify people directly about the outage. But if the outage, particularly on our restricted schemes, is only a short one, which is, everyone connected to our rural water supplies are required to have 3 days worth of storage on site. And if the outage is typically less than 8 hours, then we don't notify people by email and text. We just simply put that outage on those maps. Slightly different for our on-demand customers. So if there's an outage affecting an on-demand scheme, then obviously those people usually get told either prior to the outage if it's planned, and if it's unplanned, then we will try to communicate as soon as possible. And actually on page number 26, with the development of this outage map, out of that we've looked at, I guess, improving not only our communication with customers, but also capturing the reporting and better information about outages across our district, which allows us to give you a little bit more information. So there were 15 outages across the district last month, and 6 of these were on demand and 9 were restricted. There were a total of 1,397 connections were affected, and the on-demand average duration outage was about 3.34 hours and just over 20 hours for the restricted schemes. The majority of the outages and on-demand schemes were planned, so they're things like new connections or potentially water leak repairs. So we typically try to give between 2 to 3 day notice on on-demand schemes before we go and do those sort of things. It's probably less planned in the restricted schemes, and the majority of those outages are as a result of water leak repairs or potentially plant failures. So if I direct everyone back to page number 23, as we're sort of winding down towards the end of the year, we're keeping a close eye on our expenditure, or a bit closer eye than usual, just to make sure that those things that have occurred earlier in the year, such as the increased expenditure up in Hanmer Springs due to the fault there over Christmas, are not affecting our overall expenses for the year. And as I mentioned last time, we were expecting to see a spike in our expenditure, and that was due to the way that the wages fall. So essentially, in one pay period, we see two sets of wages normally, and that's what we expect to see the following. But because of the way the reporting dates fall, what we end up seeing is one pay period last month and 3 this month. So you'll see a bit of a spike.
Alex, the page 23 and 24, I was going to run this by Kerry, but he's not there. The water connections down and the stormwater's down. Do we read anything into that? There still seems to be any building going on. Just a cycle, is it?
Mr. Chair, yeah, that might be a question for Kerry. Yeah, I don't know if we're seeing an increase, but I think throughout New Zealand, probably the industry has a bit of a downturn at the moment. In terms of repairs, alarms, there's nothing unusual to report. Moving on to page 26. So the District Council were invited to a workshop by Taumata ROI to talk through, I guess, a redesign of the acceptable solution for rural water supplies. That workshop was, I think, really productive, and Taumata ROI are in the process of reviewing the acceptable solutions, and our message to them was that the current solution as it stands is largely unaffordable and too difficult to administer and report on, hence why there's very little use of it across New Zealand. So they've taken that away, and they've already developed some documentation indications that they are keen to review it and make it a lot less onerous on the water suppliers. One of the key takeaways from that was that water suppliers, there's a lot of flexibility around not every property on the scheme having to be, I guess, fully compliant in that solution. So we're still looking for the solution to be finalised, in which case it will make probably good sense for the Balmoral water scheme to be using that solution.
Mr. Chair, can I just a little bit extra on that, a little bit of clarity, because everybody still needs to be compliant. What Alex is talking about there is about the ownership of that compliance, whether it sits with council, whether it sits with the responsible homeowner. So as you know, at the moment, what we have been talking about, if we've got a point of entry treatment device, the way that the regulations are written at the moment is that we need to be able to monitor that 24/7. So if anything goes down, we have to deploy someone to go and fix it. The regulators are starting to see a little bit of sense now that homeowners are responsible for their own welfare and well-being as well. It doesn't always have to sit with council. So that's part of the changes that Alex is talking about there, that they're looking at those point of entry devices and saying, actually, if there's an audible alarm on it, then why can't the homeowner be responsible for that? So they could then just, maybe go down to Bunnings or go down to the local water supplier and get them to come in and install a relatively cheap piece of kit, as opposed to us having to put in this greatly onerous, fully monitored device. So that's where it's starting to lean towards, which I say is a positive, is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, that's
The thing that's worrying me about all this water is they're not looking at the affordability, because I can see people not being able to pay for it. And what happens then? When people won't be able to pay for water, because it becomes it's an essential service, but we're building up such a high standard that it could have the most amazing water, but no one can afford to drink it. Because it's just getting their costs, there's all these regulations, like putting in these monitoring in these households of self-supply. It's just so unaffordable, and a lot of the houses have got it. population would be in lower socioeconomic areas. On top of that, all our stock are getting a real treat. Just wonder.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, there was one of the key messaging that we put forward to Taumata Arawai, that there has to be a balance. We spoke to them at length about equipment validation. So, truly validated UV systems are a lot more expensive. So I guess we try to sway their view that, not everything has to be, as I would put it, gold plated. And we proposed solutions that could make it a lot more affordable for the end user.
So it sounds like it was a fairly receptive meeting, that people were listening.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, yeah, that's more, I guess, the gist that we got.
Yeah, sorry.
No, just a question, pretty much on a similar vein, but if I could just, I think we're incredibly lucky to have Alex and Kirsty advocate for some sensibility around the regulations, and so I really want to thank you for that. Do you think that there is a beginning sort of realisation through Te Mata Arawai and the regulations that, the gold standard, or, the high threshold, call it what you like, needs to be more achievable or realistic? Is there starting to be, and then I guess the other question I was thinking about is that, we've invested heavily on getting all of our other schemes other than Balmoral up to spec and regulation. Is there a fear in the future that we will be over specified as far as meeting regulations go? So does that kind of make sense to where I'm thinking at the moment? Is there some realisation in the regulations through Te Mata Arawai, and have we overspent already on the investment that we've made?
Well, that's a really difficult question to ask, Alex, I think.
Yeah, well, it is, but it's just a
maybe I'll go.
curiosity. Yeah, that's right. I'm not asking for, I'm just
Yeah,
some
I think,
theoretical knowledge.
when the regulator came in, they came in full of gusto that they were going to solve all of a whole load of problems that they thought existed. And I think the people that were in the industry at the time were probably saying, I don't think a lot of these issues do exist. And over time, as they started to mature, they started to realise that they can't control. I mean, I can remember back that they were saying, well, across the country, there's probably only something like a few hundred private suppliers. And we said, well, we've probably got that alone in our district, let alone everybody else's. So I think they started to realise just how daunting and how big the issue is. Couple that to the new government coming in with a different framework around regulation. So all of these things combined, it's sort of starting to fall into our favour, I think. But in terms of the capital work that we've already undertaken, if you were looking purely at affordability and trying to keep costs as low as possible, with the way that the regulations are going, you might argue that we could have done less. But then it starts to become a bit of a moral conscious decision about where do we sit in terms of delivering water. If we still wholly hold ourselves to account that we want to deliver the best quality water, meeting all of the compliance rules that we can, then I mean it's a sound investment and it's really good work that we've done. With the way that the acceptable solutions are shaping up, we probably could have got away with doing things cheaper.
Yeah, right. I guess
But we didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
We never had anything on the horizon. All we saw was a regulator saying everything's getting harder to comply with. So that's why we built what we've built.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not stepping aside from the fact that the investment that we've made to date has been meaningful and focused on good outcomes. But it just kind of makes me wonder whether, with the realisation of the information that Te Mata Arawai are now considering as to, where that sweet point might settle in the long term. Don't know, but yeah, thank you.
It was a very real conversation that we had just the other day because we were talking about starting to put together, think about what's the strategic intent for water, because we've sort of come into the culmination of a 10-year plan. And so what's next? And one of those conversations was actually around changing regulation. And now, we're always seen as the good team. You know, there's new regulations come in and we get on board, and there's other councils that say, well, we're not actually going to do that.
100%.
And then when the regulations reduce, then they're probably financially in a better position because they haven't invested anything, and the rules have now fallen into their favour. So it's certainly a conversation around: do we automatically just toe the line, or do we look at the long-term landscape harder than we have done and say, actually, we might accept some of these risks? I don't know.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I didn't mean to put that on as well.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, and just to add to that, it feels like Tamata ROI is, I guess, heavily focusing and probably increasing regulation for the larger supplies with potential introduction of, viral, addressing viral risk, but much less focused on the small supply. So
Yeah,
I guess
right.
it's,
Okay. Oh, that's been helpful, thank you.
Because it's,
Oh, sorry, that's it.
because it was wastewater, I see on the radio coming out with someone else with that, out to land sea is fine now or something. They got about to sea. We should be running a pipe out.
I guess the risk is though, is that, change of government, change the rules again, you're better to be at the safe end of the scale rather than, than the scraping by end of the scale.
Exactly.
Sorry, Alex.
I guess in previous years we've made quite a lot of fuss around the annual reporting because it's a huge piece of work, but it's no less of a piece of work this year. It certainly has consumed a lot of Kirsty's time putting the report together, but that was done and submitted to Tamata ROI by the deadline date. After the submission of that report, we were given, I guess, a week to go and review the way their system had received our information and whether we were happy with that. So Kirsty spent quite a bit of time going through and making sure that that was all kosher. Moving on, a total of 12 customers experienced complete water loss, and the main cause was blocked Marix. Moving on, Covidence, a firefighting scenario, which we discussed several times previously. The work has been finalised, so the team are now moving on and assessing the rest of the district to I guess, come up with a structured approach for how we plan on meeting the proposed standards in the future. With Hurunu number 1 water treatment plant being handed over to us, we've been going through and optimising that plant and developing alarm systems, which is, I guess, taken up a lot of the work just due to the sheer complexity of the plant. And alongside of that, as we expand our communications network to be primarily based on cellular communications, we've seen an opportunity where we can reduce some cost and how we operate that service. So that's now been implemented. So although the savings are not huge, it still, I guess, shows that we're trying to achieve that cost saving right across everything that we do.
Well, just on the wastewater, ECAM requested further refinement on the Chivett irrigation area. Do we still use that back area at all, or is that not used now? Because no work's ever been done on that area. There was 2 separate paddocks, and there was the one behind the planting.
Yeah, sure, Mr. Chair. So yeah, we do use both irrigation paddocks. So the back irrigation paddock and some minor pasture renovation works were done last year at that plant. And we are looking at improving the irrigation throughout the facility. So right at the moment, in fact, last year we had built, I guess, a shed which automates the plant. So although that was not brought online, the equipment is already there and programmed, ready to go. So we are now, unfortunately, the reason why that work was delayed was because we've got a finite amount of resources, and that resource has been heavily focused on water treatment plants. We've been, allowing that resource to continue and getting our plants online to achieve compliance. So now, as we are finishing that work, then that resource becomes available to continue work in other areas at Cheviot wastewater treatment plant is one of those. So we're very shortly looking at bringing online a new inorganic screen at that plant, installing a device which will prevent short circuiting of the buffer pond, which will improve the final wastewater quality. And we've got some improvements planned towards the end of this year, which will allow us to irrigate certain sections of those paddocks using automation rather than manual turning off on and off valves. So that's sort of, hopefully that answers your question.
I'll talk about the paddock behind. The second one, you've got the one by the road.
Yeah, the land flow.
And then you've got the one behind it, because that was just a swamp.
Yeah. Mr. Chair,
It needed a lot of work to even level it. It's just ponded everywhere. I'm just wondering, do you still even use it? Because if you disconnected it, because it take a hang of a lot of work to get it up to standard.
Sure, through Mr. Chair. So that some work was done to bund that paddock off, because our resource consent requires us to essentially, at the Cheviot wastewater treatment plant, we've got 2 irrigation areas. Those irrigation areas in the short future will be broken up into irrigation area 1, which will have 4 sub-irrigation areas, and irrigation number 2, which is the paddock that you're talking about, which will be broken up into 3 sub-irrigation areas. So we've done some work at that plant to essentially prevent from any potential ponding to be able to flow into the community drain and into the adjacent stormwater systems. And as part of that work, some levelling of that paddock has been done and some pasture renovation work has been done. So we are planning to do some further improvement work and actually throughout our pasture. We're just looking into that right at the moment. So very long answer to your question, but yes, all 3 irrigation areas that are consented are still being used. So one of those areas is called the overland flow area.
Yeah, that's the one with the hops, isn't it?
Moving on to water treatment plant performance. So the issues at Kowai water treatment plant have been resolved. So a new actuator has been installed, and we've just adjusted the way that that plant operates to prevent these reoccurring technical non-compliances. The Hammer Springs chlorate testing is going well, and all the samples that we're collecting there have been much lower than the 50% MOV. Work is progressing to update our water safety plans. 2 source water risk management plans were updated last month and 1 water safety plan. Moving on to compliance. So in general, apart from the issues at Kowai, which have been ongoing, all of the plants were operated in a compliant manner. Moving on to wastewater, we've had some minor issues around the place that have been addressed, and the ECAN assessments of our wastewater treatment plants continued. So the Cheviot assessment has been now completed, as well as Montnau and Greta Valley. There were no significant issues raised during those assessments. We have received a compliance monitoring report, which is an interim report from Environment Canterbury. That compliance monitoring report has identified 2 non-compliances, 1 which requires us to undertake an action. So Environment Canterbury grades their compliance monitoring reports with either compliant, non-compliant, no action required, or compliant, action required, and anything above that goes into those abatement notices and things like that. So the action that we're required to undertake is to reduce the total suspended solids and throughout our plant. So we've had a project over a number of years which takes a staged approach for how we achieve that. So installation of the floating gardens, installation of the inorganic separator screen, as well as reducing that short circuit inside the buffer pond. So the non-compliance that requires us to undertake that action refers to that. So that work was planned, and most of the actual site works have been done. So we will, what we've agreed with ECAN is that once we've provided them that information, then the grading for that consent monitoring will be changed to non-compliance, no action required.
Just for your knowledge, when it short circuits, what Alex is talking about there, so the water's coming in straight out of the public network, and then it goes pretty much straight out again. So by putting in some kind of barrier, it forces the water out to mingle with the rest of the pond. So at the moment it just sort of comes in and flows out, whereas, and that's the total suspended solids that he talks about. So if you get the water into the ponds more, then they get a chance to settle out more. So the water coming out of the plant eventually is much cleaner.
Our work continued with CCTV inspections. We're expecting our camera to arrive any day now. So I guess we've got quite a lot of historical CCTV footage, which has actually now been turned into future works as that footage has been watched, and all of our assets are being regraded. So in the future, we will have a much better in-depth understanding of our wastewater network throughout the district. So at the easement finalisation, Waikari has almost been completed. The hard and wastewater consent renewal, the work is ongoing with that, and they will that obviously goes hand in hand with the CCTV work that we've got planned. Last month we met with MKT to give them, I guess, an on-site understanding of what that plan is about, and we looked at our discharge points to give them an appreciation for how small the plant is, because it's quite difficult to understand, the size of these sort of systems and the effects that they have on the surrounding environment.
Just a question through the chair. Do you think the new regulations around wastewater, disposal to land option will be beneficial to the Harden consenting process, given that's what it currently does, but then that sort of lost favour, and now it's, where do you think we'll be in a favourable position given the consenting timeframe that we're in at the moment?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, so right at the moment I'm in the process of completing that assessment. So what we're looking, I guess the proposed standards don't necessarily give us an idea of where we would fit, because they rely on some, they require us to be monitoring something that our existing consents don't require us to monitor. So we don't have that information to see where we would fit. So what we're going to do is we're going to do, I guess, rapid assessment of where we would fit. And I think there's really good opportunity for us to actually not even potentially have to require us to irrigate to land, because there's opportunities for clear pathways through those standards for how we can actually discharge to surface water.
Okay, well that would be helpful in a small system like that, then, wouldn't it, really?
Yes.
It's bring benefit to our community.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's awesome. I'll watch that. Thank you.
And just finishing off with stormwater, there's been a lot of routine maintenance work that's done across the district. with our newest resource, who's Andrew. So he's been really keen to get stuck in, we've almost got a fight for the diggers at the moment. So he's really keen to get out there and address, I guess, even some of the smaller drains. So he's been flat out right across the district. So some work's been done over in Harden, some final work being completed over in Cheviot and Waikato. And with a heavy forecast of rain a couple of weeks ago, our teams were out again, clearing out the leaf field outfall drains, and of course that rain eventuated to nothing. There's no more questions. That's the end of. Okay.
Thank you very much, Alex. Well, yeah, you're right, the rain didn't come, and I noticed yesterday driving through to Hanmer and that, just how dry it was again, how low the rivers are. And a lot of the creeks are dry, and so yeah, the water's pretty front of mind for a lot of people at the moment. So it's good to know your team's out there keeping the tap on. Appreciate that. No, thank you very much.
Sorry, can I just ask a question? It's not related to the reporting that we've got. But I'm just talking about backflow prevention, you know, and we put those, so they're all going into all that retrospective work, you know, and then I guess they're going into new connections and whatever, but it's just was brought to our attention the other day that we got phoned up by the council because our backflow prevention RSPZ or whatever it's called hadn't been audited for the time frame. So is that something, you know, once we had that first year of implementation, and do we normally trigger that or is it the landowner that should be onto that and get it audited? Just a question, because it was a question that was raised with me when I got home. So just if we can just be reminded of that process, because I mean it's all getting action now, but I think we initially had a sort of internal process, but wasn't quite sure. So
yeah, Mr. Chair. So the council has a Three Waters bylaw and a backflow prevention policy, which which outlines that the high and medium risk properties, the property owners are the owners of the device, and they are required to periodically inspect and verify that the device is operational in order to give the water supply, which is Hurunui District Council, an assurance that the high or medium risk activity which takes place on their property is not adversely affecting or not able to adversely affect the water supply network. So I guess that's the answer. It's the property owner's responsibility to periodically inspect their device and then notify the council the device has been inspected and give us the certificate.
So can I just be reminded, so periodically is yearly?
Annually.
It is an annual thing, okay, right, okay. I mean, it's being sorted as we speak, but you know, and then because Wilkes is someone that, so does he send the assessment to council, or do we get as a landowner and have to forward it to council? What's the usual process?
Yes, through Mr. Chair. So because the landowner would be engaging a contractor directly to do that work, so the contractor would normally pass that information on to the party who's engaged them, and then it will be the landowner who's responsible to forward that on to us. Yeah. So we do have a project at the moment, going through and making sure that that everyone is compliant. And much like yourself, Hurunui District Council also has some of these devices that we are out there testing. So the same process.
Yeah, okay, that's great, because there was a bit of discussion locally, even at the local show on the weekend, because there's a group of us that live local, you know, we all do it together and do a whole heap at once, you know. So, but I just couldn't quite remember whether it was landowner or the council that triggered that process. So now I'm clear. I will report back.
And just to finish off, I believe the committee asked me during the last meeting to put out some messaging out on social media to to address blockages around our wastewater, so that message has gone out.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Fiona?
Thanks, Robbie. Mr. Chair, sorry. Just following on from the backflow prevention, it might be, I don't know if there's been much of an issue, but when it comes up, it might also be worthwhile just putting a wee reminder out there to the public about this coming up, because it's an annual thing, if they haven't done it before, and reminding them what the process is. Never hurts to remind them.
Look, if it's okay with Charlie, we might break for our morning tea now. Are you able to come back, Charlie? Or you're not out there signing off the next contract, we've held you back, or nothing like that? All right, well, I think if we go quick and aim to be back 11 o'clock.
Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify the instruction here. Because we have such a small amount of high and medium risk properties around the district, is it worth that we approach those property owners directly rather than going out, which may confuse, I guess, the bulk of the, district?
Totally, I mean, this is your field of expertise, it was just how that's done. I just think it would be good if it could be done, a wee reminder, and completely leave it to you.
Thanks, Fiona. I mean, I know from our, like, the phone call came through, it was a reminder in itself, and next to it, the Bush Telegraph was going, all the neighbours were okay, let's chum together, so, you know, it's kind of working.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Right, we'll adjourn. Charlie back at 11 o'clock. Okay, well, we're here, so back. Going to ask Charlie to go through the roading report. Introduce yourself first.
Good morning, everyone. Charlie Hart, the Roading Operations Manager, and this morning I'll run you through the Roading Operations Report. Starting on page 29, we have the financial planner for the roading team for this financial year. I just wanted to spend a moment glossing over the fact that, as usual, every year we go through the construction season, and coming into the later months of the financial year is when you might start to see some fluctuations around progress attributed to each budget. So some budgets may now increase as money is moved from one work category to another. I remember talking about this around the same time last year, where as we either do more reactive workload or increase some work programs, some of the budgets are shuffled across into other work categories to make the most that we can out of the NZTA funding model. So there's a couple of identified areas that are going to be wiggled around over the next couple of months, just to make sure that we can best capitalise on both the funding and the deliverables on the ground. So you see is at the rehabilitation, originally there was a $1.1 million budget associated to that, which was for 2 rehabilitations. But based on the feedback from NZTA's technical audit, one of those rehabilitations was deferred. which means that that money's gone into making sure that we can deliver the rest of the pre-reseal repairs, and doing the other seal pavement maintenance that I'm sure you're all aware of, like the Glenmark drives, the Harden roads, the isolated repairs that require a little bit more attention and are a little bit more costly to repair than your standard pothole. As well as maintenance mettling, where we've carried out more maintenance mettling this year than any other year in history. So there'll be some funds diverted to accommodate for that.
I was wondering where that preferred rehabilitation site was.
In Rank Road. Yes.
Yeah,
And just to comment, Glenmark Drive at the meeting the other week, they were absolutely delighted with the repair job done there and very, very positive comments about it, so.
So yeah, going across into page 30, talk a little bit more about the finances. There's two outstanding emergency works applications sitting in the Transport Investment Portal for claim. After some administration at the end of last financial year to get them carried over, we had all of that confirmed. So the two remaining emergency works applications, one was for $75,000 for crushing spread material on Lake Summer Road, which partially funded the maintenance mettling activities that went on out there, and the remainder was $472,000 for the Claybley rock walls. So all of those costs have been in. We've negotiated with NZTA around the assistance rate, and they'll be claimed this month when the finance team do their part of the claim. At this time as well, we're increasing our budget meetings with the contractor. Things are getting increasingly tight as we go towards the end of the financial year. It pretty much happens every year. So we're just making sure that we can still deliver mainly the resurfacing, so the pre-reseal repairs and the resurfacing program. And if there's any other activities that need to be done, like sign and replacements as a result of our nighttime audits, and structures maintenance, any guardrails that need repair, and the usual reactive work that never ceases to come in. So the called claim for that period was a larger claim than we would normally expect for this month, and that's on the back of two relatively light claims. So a lot of the work that's in that $1.8 million claim for February is work that has been completed previously. So that was the payment for Lake Sumner and a couple of other loose ends that we've tried to tie up so that we're not having a major wash up at the end of the financial year. We managed to do that quite successfully last year and plan on replicating that this year. Heading into the CSR data, we're I think the second or third month in a row where unsealed road corrugations, potholes and corrugations has been the most reported fault. I think predominantly this is from the Cheviot area. It appears that we've had a little bit more of an accelerated deterioration of some of the roads up in that neck of the woods. So our team have been out. We carried out some spot metal into Happy Valley, which was one of the worst affected areas outside 1320, long straight bit just after the traction seal on one of the hairpin corners. We've placed some 40 just to rebuild the base of the road where it's been to clay, and we'll be looking to the funds to see what else we can do around Happy Valley, Blyth and Stonyhurst. So they're all noted in our system. They're all prioritised against other work across the district, and they're currently programmed for maintenance mettling for. I think the Blyth is scheduled for almost the whole stretch of the unsealed road. Stonyhurst is scheduled for 4 kilometres in total, and they're currently programmed for July and August as soon as the new budgets roll on. Into LP activities, they were pretty busy in terms of potholes. They did 200 potholes over the sealed network, 382 metres of edge break, and 9 signs that were damaged or missing, which is probably about a busy month for them in February. Going into the routine drainage maintenance, 9 culverts were cleared and inspected by hand, as well as some culverts and sumps being cleared around the various townships for the street sweeping contract. Wanted to touch on the routine drainage maintenance. So we've had quite a overly positive response to the expressions of interest for the wheelie digger work. We had a total of 17 contractors apply for a apply for an information pack. That information pack contained pricing and a specification. So their pricing is all due back from that on Thursday the 20th. Once that's been received, myself and the capital program manager will review the pricing and look to either award the work or see what the best outcome to deliver that work is. And that wheelie digger is scheduled to start in the Cheviot area, so on the Blythe, and start working its way down through Greta Valley and then Scarborough and then cross over into Hardin Waikato. So we'll have hopefully a really positive update for that at the next operations committee, where we let's choose the contractor and they've got a plan that's working in place. Going into seal pavement maintenance. So this has been the highlight of the workload for us over the last couple of months, being a busy construction season. Up until the end of February, we completed over 15,000 metres of stabilisation. One of the things that was really exciting about the stabilisation was on Cathedral Road. We employed some different techniques by using lime. We've never done lime stabilisation before, so that was essentially it was a trial, but it was a well calculated trial used with some very experienced contractors who have done lime stabilising before. We did test bits on Cathedral Road to assess how the material would react with cement, with how it would react with lime, and then that gave us a formula to apply across the road, where lime obviously solidifies and provides a really nice finished surface. So where there is roads within the district, again mostly on that eastern side, like the cathedrals, the now beaches, and there's the loose material, lime stabilisation is a really effective treatment. Otherwise we would have had to do dig outs, and as you know, dig outs are 2.5 times the rate of stabilisation. So I think by that small adjustment in the actual methodology for what we were doing, we were able to save quite a lot of money by trialling something that has never been done before.
So Charlie, that's about the structure of the road as well as dust suppression, or is it?
This is the sealed network.
Sorry, I wasn't the picture there. You dug it into it.
So
Misunderstood.
that's a pre-sealed stabilisation patch.
Right. Thank you.
So heading on to page 31, highlighted that in addition to the pre-reseal repairs, we've also managed to do some of the high-profile maintenance dig outs. Typically, when we're in the construction season, it's all eyes on the capital program, on the reseals, on the resurfacing, on the rehabilitations, where we've actually managed to diversify some workforce off to carry out some maintenance activities as well. And some of those maintenance activities, as you know, were quite high profile, which has been a great outcome. Moving into the Rotherham Road rehabilitation. So that started with the design being a granular overlay. So what that means is essentially you're constructing a new road on top of the old road. So Rotherham Road, as you look at it longitudinally, there is a massive amount of undulations, and essentially what we've done is we've built it up to level it. So some areas have had quite a lot of material imported, some areas have had less, and the result will be a nice long flat section of road with no flushing, which will allow it to revert back to its original speed limit. So that work is underway. As I'm sure you're aware, it's been quite a high profile road closure for a number of weeks, and currently we're in discussions with the contractor around having to extend the closure, basically because they've highlighted that they've had weather implications, which our team is reviewing and assessing, but I think essentially they undercooked the timeline. So it's likely that they're going to be coming to us to request an extension, which obviously is politically sensitive for everyone. The detour, whilst isn't great, probably would have been the best outcome for the network users. if we were to have that site operated, not only would operated while traffic was on it, we would have lost some efficiencies by being able to work the whole road. There also would have been delays. There's no way around the fact that there would have been delays there for 15 to 20 minutes per cycle, depending on what activity is being conducted, whether or not they're tying in, what the grade is doing. So the team and I are working through what an extension looks like, why it was undercooked, and what messaging that we can put around that.
I drove the Dave tour going to Hamden to the Cleans meeting, and most of it is 30k. When you're going to do a diversion, you should really get the diversion road up to standard before you divert everyone onto it. And I thought it was, it's pretty rugged, that diversion road. I felt for the people that drive it every day, and I thought, it was roadworks the whole way.
So, I mean, we've driven the detour route quite a lot as well. I mean, there is a section on Constitution Road that is probably not held up as well, but Constitution Road was maintenance metalled. Leeches Road also was maintenance metalled this season. So, whilst it may not be apparent now with the volume of traffic that's been over it, I mean, when the detour route was first established, it actually drove okay. It is currently posted at 30 because unfortunately no one does 30. And if we were to put that at 50, then no one would do 50. So, I mean, for us to manage the risk of people driving perhaps on an unsealed road, reducing the speed limit to 30 was the most appropriate course of action. We had a number of conversations around bringing it back even up to 70 because it's an unsealed road. It's an open road essentially, but on a normal operation is 100 km/h speed limit. But I mean, to manage the risk of people who may not be as familiar or as comfortable driving on an unsealed network, that was one of the only things that we could do to reduce that.
Just thinking if you're going to have an extension and the road's not up to taking it, because the road was all corrugated when I drove it that day, and I thought this is pretty unfair to the locals that you're sending them onto a road that's substandard. You should have got that road up to, if you knew you're going to take all this traffic, and now it's going to go longer. I feel you will get some backlash from people because there was a lot of dust that day, and there was a lot of, I thought, it's a bit unfair having it if it's going to be shut for another. Because how long has it been shut already?
It would be 5 weeks by the
So, is it going to be another 4 weeks or 3 weeks? Or
just waiting for confirmation from the contractors what their indicative timeline would look like, as well as obviously reviewing the
I
other.
think you need to do some work on Constitution Road if you're going to send everyone on it. And, it's a bit,
Well, Mr. Chair, I think, I mean, as Charlie mentioned, when the detour was originally set up, the road was in pretty good shape. Because Constitution Road is generally one of those roads that's always in good shape. But it's just the sheer volume of traffic that it's taking that's creating the issue now. They're just not, those roads are just not up to handling that sort of traffic. But I take the point that we should up the intervention maintenance while we are diverting people through there. And as Charlie said, he's trying to mitigate that by slowing everybody down. But nonetheless, if the road's getting into a really shonky state, then we need to get back out there and do something else.
Sorry, no, you're right. I guess you'll work through with the knowledge that you've got to understand how much longer the extension might be and what the implications will be. As well as I do, when all these, the phone calls were quite intense. We got a lot of phone calls and a lot of, people expressing the disruption, I suppose. If an extension is considered to get the best outcome, I guess it's important to understand how we're going to convey that message to the community, because that. I talked to several people after I received some information from you, Charlie, and once people understood that actually a complete road closure is actually going to get the best outcome for that section of road that's been concerning to the locals for a number of years. They kind of understood that, however, the disruption was still front and centre of their minds. So I think if we're of the mind to extend this timeframe to get the best outcome, for me, I think it's important to understand how we're going to get that messaging, not just we're extending because it's rained or extending because it was too hot, but actually perhaps we need to confront that with, I understand the disruption this will cause for you, but this is the, and I know you'll do that, but just, I think it's about getting that information so that they truly understand, because we don't want to be criticised the fact that we're being, you know, undershot or undermined by the contractors or any, you know, because that's often what sort of sits in people's minds as well. So I think we need to think carefully and be really seamless in how we convey that message to not just the immediate neighbours, but actually the people that travel from Waio down to Preston, or, and you know, that could say with the travellers. Thank you.
I wonder, you know, in a situation like this where the contract's coming with extension, whether working hours are talked around, you know, whether they have to put the phone up to keep on. But it's a difficult time at the moment. I notice that obviously there's roadworks everywhere, road cones everywhere, and something that I noticed particularly these last few days that won't be helping is, and it's not council roads, this is largely the highway ones, where they're scraping along the sides of the roads. They put out kilometre of cones, but sometimes they put it out the day before. I think they're saying, oh, we might do it tomorrow or tonight or something. The problem is if you take out the few locals that are travelling that road, you're paying to a different audience every day. So it's, I'd imagine their thinking is they're trying to warn everybody, but on the main highway, each day could be largely a different crew of people driving through. So people drive through and they see a sign says 30 and they see rows of cones, no one there, nothing happening, whatever. So what do? They ignore all of that. And then when you're trying to slow them down through your road there, we're ignoring that too. So it's difficult.
Thanks, through the chair. Yeah, so I mean, the construction season falls in the same time for everyone, which is largely part of this perception of cones everywhere. It's because there's only a certain window to be able to do certain activities, and sealing is one of those activities that's incredibly time sensitive. And further to Madam Mayor's comments there, we definitely will be considering what messaging is going out. We have been incredibly responsive to the community that have voiced their concerns. We've employed a water car on the detour route to mitigate dust as best as possible. We explored actually using some dust suppression, the same as what logging companies use, but I mean, it just wasn't cost effective for us to employ. So there is definitely considerations for all those things being made. The Constitution Road has been graded twice already, and probably will be graded again before the end of the works. So I mean, and to the same end around working hours, I mean that is definitely something that's already happened in terms of a conversation around who's working when and what activities are able to be performed outside of the required hours. But again, that requires a modification to their TMP.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and I understand that it is a difficult time and you've got your whole routines that sort of been changed, but I also think that part of that is the challenge of managing our budget, in other words, managing our rates and what we can afford to get done and getting the most from the bang from our buck. And it's tricky. It's tricky for people being inconvenienced. It's tricky for staff trying to manage it and understanding those issues, but saying this is best bang for your money that you're spending on roading too. So I think I appreciate the work that everybody's doing, and I totally understand. And I think we just need to keep working it, as you say, the messaging. But I think you're doing your best to take people on the journey with you. So.
Yeah, and I think through what was a really tense time at the beginning of that contract, I think you guys as staff did a really good job and responded to all those phone calls in a manner that was hugely respectful for the issue. So I trust that what you'll do will be with the right intent, you know, and I think, yeah, it's a tricky one.
How's Mount Palm Road hanging up on all this traffic. We don't want to have to close it down next year, and go, no, because we're close to road here. We chase our tails.
Mount Palm Road is actually a pretty good nick, because we've just done a whole bunch of stabilisation on Mount Palm Road, which will be resealed as soon as the rehab starts. So Mount Palm will actually be in relatively good nick. Same as Isolated Hills at the other end of that detour.
Just because, you know, it's getting heavy, a lot of heavies in that now. The day I went down there, there was a lot of heavies on it. And I just kept thinking, well, it wasn't originally built for this.
I don't think any of our roads were originally built for that.
No, you know, an old J6 Bedford was a bit different.
Moving on to just some totals for stabilisation at the end of February, we did just over 15,000 square metres. On track to hit around the same as we did last year with our program, which is at the mid-20s, which again is a quite a large number of stabilisation for our maintenance contractor, and a little over 3,500 square metres of dig-outs that will go up as the maintenance dig-outs have been completed. But that will largely be it in terms of the pre-reseal program for dig-outs. Let's talk briefly about the unsealed pavements. The contractor's operations manager of Unsealed Roads departed, was a long-standing member of the Hurunui contract and the Waimek contract for Cord. So he's left a little bit of a hole in terms of the management of the graders, a bit of the coordination of the maintenance mantling program. He was pretty important to Cord's activities. So we've seen this as an opportunity to have a conversation around grading frequencies, and to develop some unsealed road like priority matrices, and to basically to better organise the graders and make sure that they're on a achievable schedule that actually produces best network outcomes rather than being reactive. So what that looks like at the moment is there's some roads that may hang on for an extra couple of days while we make the rotation and get back to the road when it's due, as opposed to instantly reacting to something that may not be out of specification. So there is quite a lot of work going into what the grading schedule looks like at the moment, and that will drive a really good program. And the intent is to have the grading program operating in conjunction with the metalling program, so that we're shaping and correcting roads as metal is being applied, which again will produce some good network outcomes. But it's been pretty dry, so we haven't had an opportunity to do a lot of reactive maintenance metalling for small patches. The section that we managed to get done on Happy Valley Road has been the first amount of reactive maintenance metalling we've been able to do for the last couple of months, just because it's been so dry. And moving into the totals, so these totals are at the end of February. I've got another update for those, so those figures will look different again next month. Just before March, we were sitting on just shy of 30,000 cubic metres of material, and that's likely to be 36,000 by the end of March, which is the most material that we've put down on our network, I believe, ever, by about 10,000 cube.
Is that down to just capacity, or we can get the material easy?
Sure, it's both. We've had a better program. We've thought a little bit harder. I think we've used money better to produce better outcomes. So, like Sumner being able to use the rest of the emergency works money to partially fund that amount of maintenance metal. I mean, there was 6,000 cubic meters of material that went down on Lake Sumner Road, and you know, by all accounts, I've heard nothing but positive things about what that road looks like, and the amount of time that it's going to need before we have to go back. So these things are you know, short-term pain, long-term gain, and you know, hopefully we'll be able to do the same next year.
I think, Mr. Chair, it's a really good opportunity for us to talk about that to the community. Charlie is thinking about comms at the moment about how we go out, because we were told through the LTP that the community wanted us to do more. I mean, albeit we never actually got all the money we were asking for, we've still got more money than we've ever had. Clearly there was an issue with not enough material going down on the unsealed sections on the Ansell network. They were starting to fail, starting to get that base course coming up through. So Charlie and the team have been working really hard at getting that material back down again. So as he says, short-term pain for long-term gain. So we're starting to build those bases back up again, which have been neglected for years and years just through not having enough money.
I wonder if it's an opportunity, sorry, through Mr. Chair, when we do those columns, if you did choose Lake Summer Road, for example, that we actually got the voice of Jim Greenslade or someone that, that their farming operation relies on that road to access. And, I wonder whether we could or should incorporate, some of the increased metal that we put down and actually get the voice of someone from our ratepayer base, our consumers, our customers, that might also be quite a good way to put a spin on that story. I don't know, just thought.
And then sealed kilometres for the financial year. We're a little bit over halfway through. The remaining sections for resurfacing are the long sections. Scarborough Valley Road, 6 kilometres, Stonyhurst Cathedral, the larger packages of work that are remaining on that. So that number will spike at the end of March. And that will be the conclusion of our resurfacing program.
So we're on target to meet our quota.
Some damage vandalism stats there. There hasn't been a lot that's been reported to vandalism in terms of what the data that we've captured, which has been good. And moving into corridor management, I just wanted to highlight that we found 31 defects as part of the warranty inspection over the month of February. So these range from sunken trenches to footpath repairs that have failed, or vehicle crossings, that type of activity. So it's really good that we've managed to catch these works before we become responsible for fixing them. And moving on to page 32, just to talk about the forward work of what's on our radar at the moment. Construction season. So the construction season officially ends on the 31st of March, marking the final day for completing reseals and pavement rehabs. So a final push will be made to finish all of that work. Whilst the official construction season finishes on 31st, we can still seal post 31st of March as long as the temperatures are right and as long as our engineer agrees. So, I mean, historically we have pushed out some resurfacing out into April before, as late as May before, where the temperature allows us to do so. So that will be something that we continue to review. As long as the conditions are right, we can continue to deliver. The setting of speed limit rules, we spoke about this last month. The impending changes for the variable speeds outside schools, which I'm sure everyone will be thrilled to see. This work is just progressing at the moment. All of the schools have been consulted. We're just waiting to hear back from the last couple around their designation, either category A or category B, whether or not they agree with their school gate and what they want their timings to look like. We're trying to standardise that as best we can. I don't think that will suit for the district level, but it might suit more at a ward level around uniform timings. A lot of the other schools rely on certain buses to arrive at certain times. So there'll be some negotiation with the schools around what the timeframes look like. Other than that, we'll still have everything hopefully going in by January next year.
Just for clarification, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the changing of speed limits, it's not just limited to schools, is it? There's this whole new system going out across the district. Well,
Yeah. So there's two components to this. There's a number of components to it. One of the components is the variable speed limits that are required to be set outside schools. Another part is the reversal of speed limits that were assigned to specific categories of roads. So that in itself was a piece of work to identify any speed limits that we've made since 2020 that meet the threshold requirement to be reversed. of which we had one, which is George Street, which is captured by the variable speed limits outside schools. So I've been talking to our investment advisor at NZTA, and there will essentially be no cost and nothing for us to do in that space, because we're going to be managing it by the variable speed limits outside schools. Outside of that, there's just been the change for how speed limit changes are made. It requires, in quotation marks, genuine consultation. Unlike the genuine consultation that we've done before on the 1600K project, and it requires all of the speed limits to go through the director NZTA. Whether or not you have a speed management plan will dictate whether you consult individually on each speed limit, or whether you consult en masse. So we're working through the implications of that to see whether or not it's worth resurrecting the speed management plan that we had started but never finished, because the change in government actually changed the scenery.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I just had, because I had, I think I've spoken to Dan, and it's probably in the process, but just a request in Scargill Valley Road down this end, where they were looking to maybe slow the speed down right at in the wee township there. So I think that's taking a process, but I just wondered if people understand, if they've got a request like that might be part of that, or it might be just a special request they make to progress through the process. Yep.
And just a final note on the collaborative working. A number of years ago, I think it was 11 years ago, in 2014, there was an MOU signed by Selwyn, Waimak, Kaikoura and the Hurunui, and the intent of that was to jointly procure and jointly develop some documents that never amounted to anything. What we've done is we've resurrected that in form, based on the feedback that was provided from NZTA in our technical audit around having delineation strategies, having traffic count strategies, having a number of documents that we currently don't have, but that were already on the work plan to deliver. We reached out to these 4 other RCAs to see what their appetite is, and whether they've got documents that we can use as inspiration, or if they didn't have anything, whether they had an appetite to develop some together. The real focus of the start of that was delivering a joint delineation strategy, which is edge marker posts, line marking, signage requirements, all of the intersection type assessments. And that was looking at providing consistency from district to district around what road users can expect in terms of this is a rural road that is 100 kilometres an hour. It will have edge marker posts. It will have a centre line if it is this wide, and standardising that criteria. So we've had our first 2 meetings around what a joint delineation strategy might look like. It's been really positive, and I think that we will be able to produce a really good document between the 4 councils. There will obviously be some exceptions. Each council will have its own interests in certain areas, and provision will be made to deliver on that as well. But it will be a really good bonus document for us to standardise, and from that document, it will shake out a forwards work program of intersections that now need limit lines, need giveaway signage. River Road being, Leslie Hills Road being an example, and how we treat each section of the road.
Charlie, I see there the traffic count data and potentially doing a house with it. How are we doing that? Have we got access? Well, one of it's privacy there. Do we do it with cell phones that way in AI, or it's not 2 cables across the road anymore? It's not students sitting on a deck chair.
Mr. Chair, it actually is 2 cables across the road still.
Still,
yeah. So the requirement from NZTA is that we continue to do manual traffic count. You may have noticed on Grays Road, there's a couple of little circles in the ground. A number of years ago, we purchased solar traffic counts that are wireless technology that feed back to a fancy database that provide you basically real-time feedback around traffic volumes, traffic types, speeds, and all of that. That product was delayed. We received one that didn't work. We then recently got a second one, which does work, which is in Grays Road. So we are the trial agency for that company to see how well it works, if it provides good feedback or not. But that we still need to provide manual traffic counts. We've had an old contract with our contractor for eons, and it's on the same rotation. It's quite prescriptive in terms of what we count and what we don't count. And I think the appetite is for us to have some flexibility around that. So where we can start doing traffic counts on unsealed network, which again, we've not done. We've done on the sealed interface, but you know, there might be roads in between there. And we can run it in-house. So essentially it would be buying traffic counters from overseas. They'd be delivered here. We would work to produce a traffic count strategy that would basically dictate how and where we would start the program. And then in-house we would deploy them and recover them and transfer all of the data that they produce into our roading and asset management software.
Any further questions? Well, thank you very much, Charlie. I very much recognise that roading's the front line out there, so well done to you and the team keeping up the battle.
Thank you.
Let's go to regulatory. Andrew, thank you.
For the recording, I'm Andrew Brown and I'm the Compliance and Waste Manager. I'll just take you through the regulatory report starting on page 33. Just a few things to highlight for you this month. It's been relatively routine. So the number of litter complaints has outstripped the number of noise complaints again, and the Waipara River is sort of our main problem area for littering. Yeah, without wanting to spoil your next month's report, I can tell you that it'll be worse next month because we've already seen quite a lot here this month, including some relatively large scale dumping. So having some thoughts around that, because the current way we're dealing with this is we're receiving multiple snaps and solve requests from recreational users of the river, and where they're small quantities of rubbish, we're consolidating those into one job, so the contractor will go up there once a week maybe and try and collect all of those. Where it's a big, offensive rubbish dumping that's reported, or where it looks like we might get some identifying details out of it, then we're going straight away. But we're not really keeping up with this anymore, and I think the reports from the snaps and Sol is a disappointment that there was more rubbish. So we just have to put our thinking caps on about how we might deal with this going forward, because it's just we're doing the same thing and we're getting the same result at the moment.
Is it domestic stuff or commercial stuff?
Oh, it's a mixture, but it's mainly domestic. It's mainly household stuff. It's garage clear out sort of. And there's been the odd pile of tyres that you might think is maybe more commercial because they're big. But obviously some of the problems with the Waipara River are that particular area. This is probably within a reasonably small stretch of the river as well. And I had a quick count up before the meeting today, and there's sort of 7 very well used public access points to the river that I'm aware of there. So it's, access to it's easy and plentiful, and once you're there, it's a maze. Lots of places to go, lots of places to put rubbish, hard to find it. So we'll probably have some discussions with EHAN about where their responsibility is and ours are in there, and then perhaps have a rethink about how we deal with it, because I feel like I keep coming to you every month telling them maybe it's time for a think.
Around game cameras or at least signage.
Yeah, I think so. I think that those multiple entrances are the things that hinder really good cameras or really good signage. But probably we need to try something different. That's my thoughts. And the other job I wanted to highlight to you is we're just dealing with essentially an abandoned house in Amberley. The occupants have moved out some time ago, and it's basically been left, and the house looks like it's being used for squatting, or at least people are going there for time to time and shelter. So the broken windows, evidence of people going inside, and in the yard is quite an accumulation of vegetation and rotting fruit and things like that. Neighbouring properties are experiencing quite a lot of rodents. Like quite a lot of rodents, we know we hear this from time to time with long grass and things, but the environmental health officer had a look and thought, actually there's quite a lot of rodent activity going on there. The homeowners, there's an estate involved in this, and the people responsible for it were initially really responsive to us, but nothing has happened in recent times. They won't return calls, emails, letters at all, so we're just working through what council's options are with that, which loosely are to essentially carry out what's required to abate the health nuisance part of it. And then that it's either a debt against the property or a debt for the owners. So that's an abate without notice provision of the Health Act that we haven't used for some time. So we're just making sure we know what to do with it correctly before we make any moves.
I wonder with that one, because I'm guessing it might be a beach road, but the similar problem we had in Waikari, there seems to be limited to what we could do. I drove past there yesterday too. It's a very difficult situation. It's not something we can really force much to happen in a hurry by the looks of it.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this one we've got, we believe there is actually a health nuisance on account of the rodents, and that is substantiated and that is real. The Health Act's reasonably strong. We can do it. We're just proceeding carefully, especially because we had people that, for all intents and purposes, looked like they were going to get it done. But maybe that getting it done is actually helpful to them when you're dealing with a mistake.
Yeah.
I'll keep the committee updated next month, so what we've done with that. And alcohol licensing, yeah. So Wine and Food Festival accounted for the majority of the licenses issued in February, and the event was monitored and ran well. Licensing committee heard application for a bottle store in Colverton, and they also released a decision on the previous hearing for a premises in Hamden. Animal control, just one dog bite reported in February, and you'll note from that the dog bite was relatively minor, and it was the attitude of the owner's behaviour that sent the victim scurrying, basically. Animal control officers tried visiting that address on a couple of occasions since, and hadn't yet located the owner or the dog, but that's ongoing. There were the dog bite and the wandering stock reports all responded to within the KPIs for the performance measures. Food purification, so another improvement notice issued during February, which is essentially an enforcement step under the Food Act. So that's I think 4 we've issued since November. They're generally finding reasonably new, inexperienced operators of food businesses, and they're not following their food control plan. Are often not really making any valid attempt to follow their food control plan either. So that's quite a step up, and we hadn't really issued any improvement notices in the last year, and then we've done 4 in quite quick succession. So whether that's changing environment or our appetite for working with people patiently over a long period of time is slightly reduced. And freedom camping, we just made some changes to the spaces at the Glenmark camping area. We found that the very spacious zone that we'd set out, there's quite often multiple campers parked within one site, and then there'd be too many campers for the site. It's being monitored by the CCTV camera, and we found that the contractor was looking at it and needing to go and deal with extra campers pretty regularly. We've made these changes to the spaces there, so they're now 4 metres wide, so it's not very comfortable to squeeze 2 vehicles in beside each other in that space. And it's been like a noticeable improvement in the numbers there. Also moved those marker posts out. They're a little bit unattractive, I suppose, for how the reserve looks, but they seem quite useful for the marking them out for the campers, but also really helpful for the camera, because you can see the space is quite clearly defined, so you can count. There's 10 there. And also just for a little bit of interest, we were doing some changes to the Freedom Camping map, and that was noted by the GIS. Obviously that's our most viewed public facing map on the website. We probably haven't, invested a whole lot of effort into that map as an information source, because we think that campers are generally using an app that covers the whole country as they move around, but there's perhaps an opportunity there to do a bit more with the map if it's being looked at. And we had one incident with an aggressive, borderline threatening camper who was asked to move on in Hamner, and didn't want to, and ended up producing a whip from his camper. And it wasn't a direct, like, I'm going to hit you with my whip. It was more of a bit of a dance, a bit of a show. But nevertheless, it's reasonably serious to have a whip presented like that. The incident wasn't reported to police directly at the time, so they didn't attend, but it was reported afterwards. Just probably for context with that as well, I had a look, and since 2020, when we started logging our visits to Freedom Camping sites properly, we've done 8,500, more than 8,500 site visits, and we've encountered more than 33,000 campers at those sites. And there's definitely been some robust discussions between the officers and the campers along the way, but there's only been 2 reported incidents where there's actually been some sort of threat or this kind of thing. So I guess it is one of those lines of work where they potentially are exposed to that kind of threat, but the numbers that we've experienced so far have been pretty minimal.
Do you take it that person's now moved on? It's not someone that resides in the area that's going to pop up again?
Yeah, well, we hope not. No, it was someone that we haven't seen before, and they did actually move on immediately after that. The officer left because we've had these discussions that actually resolving this issue is not as important as not getting injured. But that's another site with a camera, so they were able to have a look and see that he did actually leave shortly after that anyway. Just in the challenges section, so we had one of our 2 compliance officers leave at the beginning of February, and even though we were pretty onto it, I think, with our recruitment, we still had a month gap, and we've just had the new officer start yesterday, so we'll get up to speed and that will help us out. That's all I've got for the regulatory section, so I'll move on to waste unless there's
All good.
waste relatively busy month as well. The contract tender is now live, so it's available for people to download and start submitting tenders to us for the new waste contract. I'll expect a report probably next month. The operation is going to need to talk about options for recycling, the street recycling bins in Hamner Springs, which is over Christmas were withdrawn because of the contamination, and since they've been back, still getting quite a lot of contamination. So I think our officers will bring to the committee a sort of a few options for what we do with them going forward. Really. The volumes are steady. Nothing to note there. The ag recovery event we talked about a bit last month is concluded now. It went really well. It was really positively received by the public. At the time of writing the report, there'd been 14.5 tonnes of baleage wrap or bale wrap removed. I don't have the final numbers for you yet. I'll bring them back next month, but I think that is a good result. We also went back and had a little bit of a discussion. There was a suggestion around the timing of the event and whether it was the right timing. So in this case, this event was actually as a result of there being some funding left over from Ag Recovery's Southland campaign. So it was a sort of, can we do it? The officers did say that they did think about the timing, and they were trying to strike a balance between the horticultural and the vineyards needs and the baleage wrap for sheep and beef farmers. So we don't have another one locked in yet, but because of the success of this, we'd like to do it hopefully every other year, and we'll take the feedback on board about the timing and just try and find a good slot to do it.
I think that's been quite a good thing for the whole district. Our local Lions, we were helping out with the one up at Whiteborough. So, and it's surprising that baleage wrap and that how much comes in plastic fibring and things. But the Lions put in several days, and I think there was a reasonable return for them too, so quite a good little thing all round.
Yeah, I think this is really positive event and to see, I mean, that's, you know, people using it, people obviously have stored their wrap well and been responsible for it and then disposed of it through this, so it's, yeah, really positive. So we're grateful to Ag Recovery, but I think Ag Recovery are usually pretty complimentary about what they find when they come and do work in this district as well. Which supports our view that we do have people that recycle well in this district. And just an update on the clothing bins, we talked about them last month as well, and since then we came up with this the flyer at the bottom of page 39 there, that's quite a good, yes, we want these and no, we don't want these items, and the idea that if you wouldn't wear it, it's probably not the right thing to put them in the bin, which is a good message, and like I said last month, it's something that I never was aware of with these bins either, thought it was any old textiles.
Just one thing could be clarification on the clothing bins. I see now that due to the contamination that they're going to drop them in, and that our staff are going to sort through stuff before putting it in the bin. So who's paying what for that? Presumably the clothing bin people are getting a nice sorted bin to take away, but we're putting an extra hours on it.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, it's not as in depth as that. Essentially, we're asking them to be dropped off in a clear bag and they can see. So if they're really committed to hiding something in the middle of the clear bag,
yeah,
it'll still be there. But yeah, it's just so that, because it's one of those, like you're flushing things down the toilet or disappearing it into your wheelie bin. We found that once it's gone down, people don't really care what goes in there, but in the clear bag,
yeah.
So it's not a
We're
real
not
in-depth.
getting a lot of time.
We're not spending a lot of time. We're not incurring any cost really. It's just done through the weighbridge. They have a look. Yeah. As you'd expect with that process, the volumes have dropped a lot, but the quality's really improved. The difference in volume means that the clothing people are coming out every second week rather than every week to empty them. And also interestingly, they had the same problem at the Southbrook recycling facility in Waimakariri, and it wasn't resolved and they've withdrawn their bins. So we didn't want that to happen, and at this stage we've got a solution.
So the bins that were across by the toy library, isn't it, behind the library, are they not there? Yeah.
I don't know about those ones, Mr. Chair. No, the ones that were at the transfer station in Rangiora, I think the same operator that we've got at our transfer station, same issue, and they sort of said it is not viable for us to keep coming and emptying these with what we've got in them. So the choice was either get better quality stuff in them or we lose them. And so for our ones, we've still got them and we've got better quality stuff in them, and the Southbrook ones, they withdrew them because it wasn't worth their while. I assume this is also a problem in all of the ones that are around on the street that are outside of our wheelhouse. So we'll offer them our same flyer.
Yeah, well, it's not just the clothing. I think, you know, like Salvation Army and that ring, all the charity shops are getting all sorts of stuff chucked at the door on the weekend. So it's,
yeah, I think, and that's been a problem for a long time as well. On a similar note, we've still got some problems with stuff being left outside transfer stations while they're closed. We've got a bit of we've got a sort of graduated response to that. If it's the first time we identify someone, we just try and give them a wee bit of coaching, and that's not thanks, but that's not really what we want. And if there's been if it's a lot and the contractors had to go and shift it all, then we may send them an invoice for that sort of the clean-up cost of it. I always see that as a slightly delicate thing because I'd rather have that parked up there than thrown down the Wairaka River, but I'd much rather have it delivered to the transfer station when it's open and disposed of properly. I guess interestingly, it's one of the ideas that we have been exploring for the likes of doing the transfer station in Shedyard is what can we realistically provide out of ours so that people can properly dispose of things.
is that picture there with all the bags outside the bins, is that because the bins were full or because they had trouble poking them in the top to get them into the bins? What do we think it was happening?
I don't actually know.
Just pure
Mr.
laziness.
Chair. Well, it's not, again, like they're sort of neatly placed there in their bag, so it's not the worst, it's not the worst of the worst that you see in rubbish dumping. It's probably, again, this is probably someone who's trying to do as close to the right thing as they can do. They've gone down, they either can't put them in the bins or the site's not open, so they've neatly stacked them next to the bins. technically it's still littering, and it's not desirable for us to have that, but it's also a well-intended person probably that neatly stacked their rubbish there for us. So yeah, but we're aware of some other sites in other districts where out of hours or all the time, they have the big open top bins and you can sort of go in there and fill your boots, and then, you know, obviously then you don't have a problem with not being able to fit your things in the bin, but then you have the problem of people going in there anytime with anything they like and offloading it for free, and you know, eventually that has to be paid for somehow. So ongoing, might have an interesting solution for Cheviot when we have a look at some options.
I get yourself one of those whips, so.
Yeah. There's only one other thing that I wanted to highlight, and it's just we had a bit of damage at the bin in Greta Valley, had a fire in it. That's one of our metal, the metal outers with the plastic wheelie bin inside it. So the plastic wheelie bin was destroyed, but the metal outer was actually fine. So it just cost a replacement in a wheelie bin. Probably a good result. I'll leave the waste report there. Unless there's questions.
A good report, easy to follow. Yeah, I like the fact that the approach that you take, to be fair with the compliance, that balance between trying to work with people and then always trying to work with them unless it really gets to a point where you don't have a choice. So I appreciate that one.
With the team holding the front line again. Think you're keeping it as regular?
Yeah, building property.
Building a property. You've got to introduce yourself first for the.
My name's Glenda Clark, and I'm the team leader for properties and amenities planning, and I'm presenting the building and for today. We're building on behalf of Kerry, and you'll have to forgive me, I obviously know a lot more about property than building. So I've had a quick look through. Kerry's asked me to take back any questions that you might have, and he really wanted me to point out that after a small dip in the last month for the building consent within the time frame, they're happily back to consenting within the time frame again. Anything from a report that you'd like to sort of ask about or anything like that?
Touched on earlier on with the water connections and things, water and stormwater, I think it was, were both down. And here building consents is down. Is that just a bit of a part of the cycle, or still seems to be houses going in, particularly around our Amberley area, but is it slowing?
To be fair, Mr. Chair, I can't answer that question, but I can certainly pass it on to Kerry to provide some additional feedback on what his sort of views are on that reduction.
Mr. Chair, I've seen over the last probably 2, maybe even 3 weeks, that those building consent numbers on the weekly reports are starting to ramp up. So whether there's going to be, I mean, a recovery, I don't know, but there's certainly, normally we get about 14 every week, but I think the last 2 or 3 weeks has been 18 upwards. So I think it's just one of those things that goes through its and starts and its cycles.
Yeah, as an extra stage or something comes on.
Yeah, that's right.
Whatever.
Yeah, especially this time of year, we start to see wood burner requests coming in. You know, all of those sorts of things. Generally, they're seasonal.
Are you after questions from the whole lot, or will we flick through each page and see who's got questions what where?
For the building report?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, we've got one a bit over here.
Just
already, Anna.
just a comment on page 45 actually with the trial of the 24-hour consenting. So that'll be interesting. I can see that's for a basic, simple, low risk dwelling. So I guess that's in the pipeline in order to make things quicker and easier for people.
Yeah, that's right, Mr. Chair. So the what the team are trying to do there is obviously provide a different level of service. But it comes with a couple of fish hooks, which that mentions there. So you've already got to have done something and you must meet the criteria for something else. So it's just about, so what we've been talking about is how do we convey those messages so that, because all people will see is 24-hour processing and they'll just toss something over the fence and expect it to be turned around tomorrow. But it's not quite as simple as that. So we're just carefully working through what that might look like. And I don't think we're ready to sing from the rooftops just yet, but you'll see when the fees and charges come to you, Kerry's been thinking about, okay, well, it might be a long-term game. So let's start getting people, if we can start to get people to apply for the PIN early, then that helps smooth the passage for the building consent coming through. So one of the things he's doing is setting up a fee specifically just for the PIN and or for a building consent without the PIN. So we'll start to build that up, that momentum from the fees and charges, I think, and then start to communicate a little bit more about with people about how we might go about it.
Oh, look, I think it's great looking at it strategically, just to seeing where and where that fits within our overall strategy. We're sort of working on that. It's oftentimes it's a lot of little things done well that all feed in together to keep all the different parts moving. Thank you.
We're on the building.
Yes, thank you.
Planning and property.
We're going to property now, moving into property now.
Page 46.
Yes. So we'll start just sort of at the top and I'll just slowly work my way through. So condition reports for council buildings and land. So we've been through our first 3-year cycle, which finished last year. We're restarting some of that. So we're going back through and having a look at buildings and land again, having a look to see what work has been done, what work might need to be done, if anything needs to be brought forward because it's now deemed as more urgent, that sort of thing. We've put these on hold for the last sort of 3 months of this financial year because we've got a lot of the CapEx and some of the minor works and planned maintenance to get through to make sure we hit those targets. And as you can see, those numbers in that first year of the LTP are quite low through March and April. Unfortunately, I've missed off the May numbers, but it's a similar number, it's around 3 or 4. As we go into next year, we don't have the same amount of planned maintenance or CapEx works. So you'll see that these numbers for getting those condition and maintenance plans updated will start increasing quite steadily and should be sitting around that 10 to 12 month complete.
Could I ask, some time ago, a number of years ago, really, there was kind of talk about doing a big stock take and seeing what was in what condition and could we do any rationalising or whatever. Is that something we're going to have a look at? That was whether all these properties, presumably these are all properties with structures, we're not talking about shingle pits and God knows what.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So it was around here, just doing that stock take and looking and thinking, you know, is there anything there that's no longer appropriate or we don't need?
So I think some of that work has been completed, whether or not the rest, as we've just gone through, it's taken sort of 3 years to get through the 221 identified properties. And that number's slowly increased as we've found things on land that we haven't been aware of previously. And I think some of that work will definitely be required for the rationalisation. And some of that has even come through in some of the halls work that's been done as well in the different areas with Cheviot and Hurunui wards. So I think we'll see some of that come through. And as we're going through now with Rick, he's been here for a year, so he's picking up on additional things that from 2021 before we first started. Rick and I, we're picking up on some of those things as we're coming through them. Yeah, it's getting an eyeball on this.
I think it's fair to say, Mr. Chair, that is certainly the aim, is to work out all of those things. But as you find these things, that you know, somebody somewhere is always emotionally tied to something. So when it might make absolute sense to us that we need to have a conversation about disposal in many of different varieties of how that comes, it turns into a stumbling block of sorts. And as Glenda says, we just haven't had the headroom, given that there's just everything flying in from all different angles. The team haven't been able to be able to compile that list. But that's certainly something that we'd like to do, is to not say, right, these are all right for disposal, but actually these are all right for a conversation. And that's where we're heading to start with.
And will that weave in with, I mean, we've got some big high profile halls and that's all, the process is already underway. But will that sort of weave in with your thoughts of other ones is what standard or where we need to keep them, maintain them, if we're going to keep them?
Yeah, well, we tried to have that workshop the other day, but we ran out of time, so hopefully we'll have it. I don't know if we're scheduled to do anything today, but maybe the next workshop day that we get, that we'll have that conversation, because we certainly do need to start that conversation. I don't think anybody's got a fixed outcome that we're looking for, but we just need to start the conversation.
So the timing's pretty good that you've pretty well finished going through everything. What you've got a pretty
We're
complete list
excited.
right now. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
And just a comment, I guess, the other thing, I think oftentimes communities will come to us and want to invest something in council, or they've found a building, and I truly believe that in our strategy or our strategic overview on that, if somebody brings a building, they need to have a long-term strategy on the maintenance that it needs and that type of thing, so the community understands the commitment that they're making to keep it. Because for a lot of small townships, it's hard to find space for little community groups to be able to use. It doesn't have to be big and fancy, but it's a little space they can use and look after, and mothers can get together or something like that, because the cost of doing anything is horrendous. So I understand why people want it, but it's great until they have to start doing the maintenance. We had up at Scargill, they took on the Plunket rooms. We had a very active group at the time, and they took it all on board and they fundraised for the insurance, that sort of thing, but they change over time. So that's where I think they need to have conversations with these communities as they look at taking them on, to have that long view. I know Cheviot's got a lot of really good active groups that just they want their buildings and they look after them, and they won't utilise. So it's different for every community.
Just the Cheviot Library Service Centre, the painting of the outside.
Yes.
Because the piece that's built on the front, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, it's never been touched since it was oiled when it first went on, which would be 10 years ago. And it's getting pretty shabby. Is it actually better now to just paint it like the rest of the building? Because you wonder.
I believe that's underway.
I thought that they got started this week.
I'm just saying, is it going to be oiled, or is it going to?
I believe at the moment they're doing the moss removal, and then the next stage after that would be to stain it. Because it's previously been stained, we'd have to have a look at what paint finish we could actually use on it if we were going to switch to a paint finish rather than the other. Either way, I think the long-term plan to make sure that we're rejuvenating that. And
it's all very well in maintenance programs for our community, but when ourselves as a council don't look after our own buildings, it gets a bit hollow with our communities to have conversations about, oh, you haven't looked after that, and they just start pointing the finger back at us and say, well, don't call the kettle black. Thanks for saying the painting job.
When I first started here, there was a substantial list of expired and works that were due to be done on leases and licenses. I believe the number was around 57. We're slowly working away at that as and when time allows. But the good news is that list is not growing. So we have as a team, we sat down and we made a decision that we don't want to see anybody else end up on that list. So we're proactively working within the timeframes, and we've created a reporting suite within our department so that we can actually monitor and see when things are coming up. The no formal agreements, that hasn't changed much. Again, that's coming down to a time factor. We do have a list that has been identified, and as time allows, we'll continue doing that. One of those that we're working on Obviously, at the moment, it's the Belmore Campground, and we started those discussions with them in November last year, apologies. And we've now determined that there's a cricket group that's involved in that reserve that we weren't aware of. So we're going to make contact with the person. I believe the actual cricket group is in hiatus, but so they are maintaining the grounds 2 or 3 times a year. So it would be good to start that conversation as well.
Is there a formula or whatever? Yeah, I picked up on that. But, you know, we've got a big chunk of land over there, which is about to have umpteen different recreational things put on it. How do you, presumably somewhere out of it, you want to pay the rates on the big dirt? How do you divvy it all up for? So that
That's
at least washes its face, it's not a money making exercise, I wouldn't have thought, but.
Yes, so that's a really good question. So one of the things we've discovered, there's another project down here which is around rates and rates payment, and working with the rates team here, reserves in general, especially recreation reserves, remain non-rateable unless you charge rent for an activity that's not specified. So for example, a grazing lease, that if you charge rent on a recreation reserve for grazing, then rates become applicable, that land becomes rateable. But if it's an activity that's allowed as part and within legislation, then the land stays as non-rateable. So there's no rates effectively on that land. And part of the work that we're going through at the moment with the Works Department, with the Rates Department, is that we're identifying who should be paying rates and who shouldn't be, and has the land classification for rates been changed from rateable to non-rateable, and has that been allocated appropriately according to the lease terms, etc., etc.
Just a question I have, I guess, because there's a number of bits of land around the district where it costs more to maintain them by getting someone to mow in bits and pieces, and while some people will graze them, they're actually mobile lawnmowers as opposed to a profit making. And then I think it's one of the difficulties with some of our little reserves is the cost of even paying a lease, because actually they're doing the community a favour. But I understand from a council point of view, we need to have records so we don't end up back where we were. So it's finding that balance between covering the cost of writing up a lease and having that stuff documented, but then how often do we have to renew that lease or just update it less frequently? If say it's a club that's been there for 100 years, you know, they might not need to renew it every year.
Yes, so
find that balance.
Yes, so some of those activities are prescribed through the legislation, through the Reserves Act, and the grazing is an allowed activity to happen on recreation reserves for maintenance purposes. It's when when the decision is made to charge rent for that, that's when it changes. So what we're planning to do as a team is when we come to the committee meetings is to lay all that out. So there's an understanding that goes through that if we charge rent, then rates become applicable and what that might look like.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's any other questions on that one? The 12-month lease and license activity plan, I mentioned before that we've now got some working reports that gives that to us. We've got 9 remaining that need to be actioned before the 30th of June this year, and they've all been allocated to officers, and that work has started. And in the next financial year, we've identified that there are 11 planned works. And what those works are either lease expiries, so subsequently potentially new leases, rent reviews, lease renewals as well. And then obviously any new ones that come up throughout the year, we will class as unplanned. The new leases and licenses that we're working on at the moment, there's a gravel extraction for Lakefield. That hasn't progressed any further. Officers have reached out to the applicant to see if they want to progress, and recently discussed with Kerry around gravel extraction and the benefits of what that might look like and how we can potentially expedite some of those processes. The Jed River Cemetery for Cheviot, the LTO is with the applicant for signing at the moment. And we're working through some others. The men's shed, we're restarting discussions with them around the plumbers building. We'd really like for them to move into that to allow good parking spaces for Soldiers Block. There's some additional works. The Amberley men's shed's now finalised, so that's going to be signed off this week.
So that then puts it squarely in their court to, they can start. whenever they want.
Absolutely, so they can
Right.
start securing their funding. That's been the biggest
Yeah.
thing, has been getting the site plan which matches with the land development for the land.
That's through the chair. I think, I don't know how long Kerry's away for, but I think the men's shed were looking to have a sign and whatever, so they can do some of their own comms around that.
Correct.
Have we got that tidied up? I know Joe
Yes,
Retallick
I've
was
sent that through to Joe today, the
Oh,
contact
perfect.
details, and I'll work with you. They don't want to hold the process up
Yeah,
in any way, so it may be a one that's already done and it's a bit more,
yeah, okay.
yeah,
That's cool.
official.
Okay, so as long as we get that tidied off for
Yes.
them so they can get going.
Yes, I've sent all that through to Joe this morning.
Awesome, perfect.
We've finalised the Leithfield leasehold land lease with Glostein, and that's all signed off, and top contracting, that's been done as well. The project there is one I was talking to you about before, which is the rates one, as time allows, and when we're completing lease renewals and rent reviews, we're looking up that information at the same time, just to see if there's something we can do quickly. The obtaining CCCs for the council buildings, that is with Kerry at the moment, so he's allocating that to one of his team to be able to assist us with that, so we can hopefully get some movement on that. And capital projects, we are moving through those thick and fast now. So a lot of work has been completed and is in progress at the moment. You can sort of see that list through there. Planned maintenance, so this is for some minor repairs that are within the repairs and maintenance budgets for individual buildings. So we've identified those. There's I have put in there approximately 30, and they've quantified that is 36. They are mostly underway and planned for the next sort of 3 months.
For clarification, so that would be in our local communities where they've got a budget line.
Yes.
And in some instances, so you're working with them?
Generally, yes,
Yes.
yes. So we identify the works that have come from the maintenance plans that have been previously completed. And if there's anything in there that is substantial, so there are some substantial repairs and maintenance works that have been identified, for example, re-epoxying a floor, we're actually going to those groups first to say, we've just been aware of this, are you happy for us to continue? There are small minor things for, you know, $500, which are replacing, could be light fittings or something small, and we are planning to go ahead with those.
And thank you, I just make mention of the fact that the likes of Waipara, oftentimes they have those people within the community.
Absolutely.
So I know that we've done a body of work and we've put something up there, but I think that working on getting the roof resealed and they've done the floors, but it still comes back to them.
Absolutely.
And I guess every community is different, but they are very proactive in getting the work done because sometimes they can also get some outside funding for it. So rather than just having, this is in the work program and all of a sudden it's done, they are always working on ways to save money. So, and there's a number of communities, I think Cheviott's a bit like that as well on a principle. So we've drawn up these plans, but when it comes to doing the work, if they can do it locally, then that's a savings for the community.
Yes, and Waipara's a really good example actually. So we've spoken with a DI officer recently.
She said
and
she's got a hotline to the council now, anytime she needs something, she rings, and the team's also helpful, so there's a
Yeah.
possibility.
So we had a chat with them and let them know that we had this list of works, and actually some of the works they'd already taken care of. And so we're working with them, and she's gone, no, we'll do that one, we'll do that one, we'll do that one, and then we can just go in and check and make sure that we're happy with everything. So
That's fantastic. That's a really positive relationship because sometimes Glenmark's been a wee bit, the Waipara's been a wee bit you know, stay out of our business. And it's sort of almost come full circle when we've got to a point where they're happy to work, and that's trust.
Yeah, and we would like to think that we're gonna continue fostering that, because we're really happy for communities, like you say, who are invested and who are really happy to do the work and all of those sorts of things. We're really happy for that to happen and to continue to happen. It's just, I guess, making them aware of what we've identified as needing to be done or potentially needing to be done, and then maybe coming to an agreement of, do you want us to take care of that? Would you like to take care of that? You know, that sort of thing. And I think, yeah, ongoing communications and attendance will be, you know, teamwork, working together.
That's the one. Thank you.
Any questions on any of those sort of sites, rather than me run through them individually? Nothing. And then we've got the halls review. So we're still waiting on the toy library to confirm if they're prepared to receive the building. And we've provided them with the maintenance plans and what's going to be required to get that building to a standard. And the Cheviot Courthouse, we've got a new application or an interested party, and they were getting some quotes, so we're following up with them this week. Waikari Hall, we are moving forward with that. We've providing some information, and we're in the process of drafting up a report.
So is that still providing, you know, I don't know all the ins and outs, there's two halls, people are trying to decide what to do. Is that still in the information feeding in stage, so they're still looking at options, or there hasn't been a decision, well, which one's going, which one's staying, anything like that? Yeah, I'm just a bit lost where it is. Are we sort of like doing work in different areas that may or may not happen? I don't know.
Mr. Chair, I think it's fair to say we're in a state of re-baselining ourselves, I think. And we've got a report that Glenda's currently working on that began to the next Hurunui Community Committee to answer the questions as are there, which is obtaining quotes, but also actually ask some fundamental questions about the process and where to next. And I think that's probably where we're at the moment. Yeah.
Am I going to push it past there?
No, we're trying to forge a pathway.
Yeah. Thank you.
So heading through CSRs, working through those, we have seen an increase in the number that are coming through. And we're working hard to get through those on a regular basis. We do have a couple of ones that have been outstanding that we're pushing out at the moment. We need to just get a wee bit of clarification on getting a response through for those. LIMS, it is always up and down, the number that are coming through. A new LIMS officer has been appointed, and they have started, I believe, 2 weeks ago. So Virginia has been spending some time with them, training them, and that's probably going to take about 3 months to be able to train them, and then ongoing support for them as well. Social housing wait list is pretty steady. We're about to, yes.
I was going to say there's one graph on that page that's screaming at me, and that is the social housing list there in Amberley. And I didn't know where you go with that, whether it's with their strategy or with their talking. I mean, we were looking at big projects that may come up the next decade, whatever. But to me, it's only a growing problem. And I think we maybe have to tag some more thought as to where we go with that.
No, I agree. It does remain reasonably steady at around that mark, and we probably get maybe sort of 3 to 4 tenancy turnovers in a year. So, you know, if we're looking, you know, somewhere between 35 and 37, that's sort of where it's sitting at the moment. It can be a long time. Every year we do a mail out to the people who are currently on our wait list. So we will see a drop off next month where people's situations have changed, and they may have moved into retirement committees and haven't been assigned, those sorts of things. So that letter is going out within the next 2 weeks, and it normally comes in back to us in May. And it also goes to our current tenants as well, asking questions around you know, what support they're receiving in the community, those sort of thing as well, next of kin. The social housing is an interesting portfolio to have because on paper we're landlords. However, there is a social aspect to that for the types of tenants that we have and the support, and some have more family support than others, and so they do take officers' time. So when you're in your own home and you've got your family to look after you, they might come around and change light bulbs and batteries and fire alarms and do all those little jobs. We find that we are often doing that and easing doors and bits and pieces. So we have started some dialogue, especially up in Cheviot, with the local medical providers and district nursing. We went out with the mayor towards the end of last year, and just to give you an example, just recently in the last couple of weeks, we've seen a notable decline in someone's tenants' cognitive responses and ability to be living by themselves. So we have worked with the medical centre and advised them. We've seen that decline, and they are stepping in and they're going to complete an assessment of whether it's appropriate for that person, or are there other services that can be put in place around them. So while we are landlords on paper, there is a social aspect that we do look after. But the wait list does not seem to be reducing. It seems to be following steady but not reducing.
It just seems we've touched on different things over the way, whether or not people are able to apply for a grant going in and different structures around setting it up, but it seems to me it's a problem that sooner or later we're going to need some more houses.
Potentially.
Well, maybe.
Just on the social housing, I had a few people ring me about sometimes the garden's shabby and it's quite hard for the tenants to look after, you know, the elderly and that, and I know that like the garden club members are elderly themselves, you know, and they're having a sustainability thing. So does it need to be that we are the landlord, do we need to have a bit of a program where we keep up the appearance of them, you know, the gardens and everything around them? They're in the centre of the town, sort of. How do we go about maintaining that part of the social housing? Because, you know, I think in these tenancy agreement says the tenant has to, but when the tenant's on a walker frame and everything else, it can't be noted, you can't really expect them to weed the garden, can you? And they've got their family living in their community. It gets, you know, I just think we need to look at that a wee bit. Yeah, cope with that.
It's almost whether you give the Lions Club a whistle once a year or something. Yeah.
We have we had approached the gardening club and and they've responded back to us with some really great feedback, which we took on board. And I think our social housing policy, which that's actually written in to part of that. I'll go back and have a look at that tenants are able to maintain and look after them so that we're not incurring additional costs for the general ratepayers. So it's certainly something that we can look at, and one of the things we do look at is their ability to be able to look after themselves, and how do we facilitate that and look after the unit that they're living in. And we have in certain areas, for example, the Waiā temporary housing area up there, that's actually written into the tenancy agreements that we look after the grounds, and it might be something that if we have to factor that in, then we'd need to look at making sure we can recoup some of that as well. But happy to look at that.
Yeah, it's just an issue that's bubbling away there.
Yes, we've had gardeners in, I think, hopefully they should have been finished last week.
We worked yesterday.
Right. Any other questions on sort of social housing? Probably we're looking at damage and vandalism now. Probably the biggest cost to date, with the exception of the fire in QMS, is the truck driving into the Hurunui River toilets. which
Yeah.
Kerry, with his super sleuthing work, managed to track that person and that company down. So there was I believe, there was a post that went out on the Facebook page, and a member of the public happened to identify and see it. So I was able to provide us with some information, and Kerry tracked that down. I'm unsure of what those costs are yet, so I believe that's underway as well. We've completed lots of little minor and CapEx works. There's some wee photos there to sort of give you a bit of an idea. You can see there in the first photo, one of our tenants, our long-term tenants, I believe she's been there for over 20 years, up in Hamner, and is now using a frame there. So we've added a mat to the front door to ease her being able to get in there.
We couldn't add a lawnmower to it. Sorry.
And then we've just a few other photos there of different works that we've completed in the area. And any questions on any of those? And then for the road stopping, that's still in progress. It's just about getting the final paperwork back. And the unnamed road at Motnow Beach, that's got approximately 1,300. The report has gone to the Ministry of Conservation for approval. I think that's everything. Any more questions?
Sorry, just going back to the toilet where the truck damaged it.
Yes.
So does your insurance cover that? So we're claiming against the truck driver's insurance.
That's correct.
I believe so. Awesome. That's well worth it.
Yeah, well, as Glenda said, I've taken my help to Kerry. He was,
Yeah.
he was a super sleuth, like Agatha Christie. He just kept phoning and phoning and phoning. Everybody gave him a little whisper, it might be somebody else or it might be something else, and he kept going, quite dogged, but he got there in the end. So, well done to him, because otherwise it would have been a cost of the ratepayer.
Yeah, good work. That's great. I mean, it's great that actually our ratepayers know that we've gone above and beyond to try and, save the cost burden sitting to repair with us, because I don't know, it's probably come at $50,000.
Yes, there was substantial damage to it,
Yeah.
so including it hit so hard that the actual concrete lining on the inside had cracked at the top.
Really?
So.
It's pretty sad that someone would do that and drive away.
Well, there is some view that they weren't actually aware of it happening. 'Cause
Big traffic.
I think they'd actually gotten out and used the facility, and the truck hadn't had the handbrake engaged and it was rolling. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not
right.
here to cast aspersions, but
Do we need some bollards?
I
Which would be
believe that's
quite
being-
simple for
I
them.
believe that's being factored in. Is the installation of some bollards on the front,
Yeah, some railway ones with those strokes.
Yeah.
Doesn't take much to stop.
Yeah, it was quite a shock when Kerry and I were completing a tour of the region and in that area, and we stopped to have a look at it because someone had mentioned there was a wee bit of damage. And it's quite a shock to a life too. So,
Okay.
well, I called Dan in because I figured he.
That's what's just funny, I don't know whether it was if care
No,
of
I
something
think-
it's gonna do. Well, that would be, yes, union rules. It looks like we've better stop for lunch. Thank you very much for
thank you for having
being
me.
forward report first time out.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate that.
Good on you.
Thank you.
So, yeah, we've got to be ready for another meeting at 2,
Correct.
so we want to get back really smart. We just take 20 minutes.
Well, Dan, I'll take, you know what Dan Blair's like, he'll whistle through that. And
I was gonna say,
so
we might as well
don't
just-
feel like you're under any pressure to have lunch.
Are you saying that we just sit down?
Oh, no, I haven't asked him to come in, but I was saying have lunch, but don't feel like you're on.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
Rest.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, so we'll
Guys, what time is it?
we'll
So
adjourn for
stimulating.
lunch. Okay, so welcome back. Draw your attention to page 52, the amenities report. Dan could introduce himself and take us through.
Hi, I'm Daniel Blair, Program Management and Amenities Maintenance Manager. So yeah, I'll run through the amenities report. I'll move on to page 53 because all the data in page 52 is included there. In terms of routine and reactive maintenance, I'm really starting to get through the number of tasks that the team have got allocated. 945 completed this year and additional 173 reactive tasks, which is great to see. And yeah, what the tasks are broken down in the graphs below. There's no questions around the page 54. In terms of the mowing, so yeah, the last month, all the mowing audits were passed, which is pleasing to see. And yeah, the contracts report that growth has slowed down, so they've managed to keep on top of that, which is good to see and which is reflected in the audits. Moving to page 55. One positive is there wasn't much damage or vandalism over the Christmas period, which was pleasing to see. Sometimes we see quite spikes. Well, this year haven't had that same amount. Not sure why, but it's a good thing to report. And yeah, the next few pages, we've just got some photos of some of the works that the team have been doing all around the district. So yeah, welcome any questions on the amenities report.
I'm guessing then it's just an ongoing thing, but Queen Mary South here, the buildings in there, being more broken windows yesterday, I could see. It'll be just never ending, I'm sure.
I'll move on to the program and capital report, which is on page 58. So the overall February was a really busy month. We managed to complete quite a few projects as well as make a good progress on a few more, which is sort of reflected in the spend, which was got over 2 million, which is great to see. I'll run through each page and just highlight some projects as I go, but yeah, welcome any questions on any of the projects identified. So on page 59, one of the projects, the district-wide matriculation renewals, what that project's for is for upgrades of water mains in Harden, being towards the reservoir and then also in the township itself. So we've been to and evaluated that tender and awarded it, and those works are going to start later this month, which is great. So the contractor will do that. We'll have 2 crews, one running at the same time, one doing the rural stuff and just one doing urban in the township, which we are really pleased to see. Another water main renewal, which is also getting undertaken at the moment with the works that started, is at Honori 1. So that's upgrading from the plant itself, running up the hill towards the other reservoirs. So those works are underway. No questions, I'll move on to page 60.
You believe old main line still workable?
Page 60. Yeah, the resurfacing program is starting to take shape with a number of sites being finished in February and quite a few more programmed for the next couple of weeks. All going to plan. The majority of the sites will be finished before the end of March, with maybe a couple to be done in April, which would be great. Any questions on page 60 projects? Page 61. Yeah, the project at the top, Eastern Reserve or Village Green, depending on what you want to call it. You've got a few projects going on there at once. So at the moment, we're building the footpath, which runs along the top of the bund, as you can see there. We're also working in conjunction with the cricket club to do with the sports field. So the cricket club are there at the moment digging out where the cricket block's going to go. They're doing their works, but also at the same time, our contractors in there doing the upgrade for the irrigation. So they've finished off the whole site and they're starting to mould power the irrigation pipes in this week. So yeah, it's a high activity down the reserve at the moment, which is pleasing to see. Any other questions on page 61 before I move on to 62? Page 62, might have to turn your bit of paper around for that photo, unfortunately. Yeah, that's a stormwater.
Yeah, sorry, Dan,
Yeah.
the re-nourishment project down at the beach, that's all pretty spectacular. How does that sort of finish off? They're obviously putting the big core down there at the moment, and then I suppose they bring the material back to sort of address it. How does that sort of end up down in the car park area?
So yeah, at the moment, so yeah, they're going through and they're running through the bulk fill. Majority of the bulk fill, which is about 37,000 cube, will be in by the end of this week. The next week they'll come back and actually shape that and move some material over the back and make sure that is the correct gradients and finish that final compaction cut. At the car park area, we need to fill above that, so we'll sort of overlay the existing, then tie into the existing retaining wall, which we're doing some works to this week, so we're raising it in essence. So once that's done, there's still a few other things we've got to do. So we've got to reinstate the existing fence that was there, because we've had to remove that to do the works. And then, things like signage upgrades and just a few, putting bollards back and things like that. So there will still be a few works going on in April, but the majority will be done by end of March.
There's a lot of positive feedback out there, a lot of positive interest. I don't think a lot of people realise just how big a project it was.
It's a lot of material. Doesn't cube. About 100,000 tons. Cool. Back to page 62. Yes, the job at the top was one of 4 jobs which we're doing in now. So we've had a few different individual projects in the township there, and all of them should be completed this week, which is pleasing to see, and hopefully we'll have a really positive difference in mitigate any isolated flooding issues which have been identified, which is great.
Would be fantastic, because I know that there's been a couple of goes that in my time on council about doing some work there to sort some of those out. So if they actually take care of them, that'll be very positive for the community.
That's good.
And yeah, the next few pages, it's got a few of the projects which have been completed, and then we've also got the appendice as well, which is going through, gets rid of the shows which projects have been completed as well. Welcome any questions on the report.
Just Johnny's reading. Just looking through, so you're feeling fairly confident that of completing the year's works?
I think for what we've got planned, definitely.
Yep. Bring on, that'd be fantastic.
There'll be a few projects which require carryover. We've had a council report come through last month, which sort of highlighted which those ones are. But that was, I said that's known and we'll plan for that.
Yep.
Just good. So.
Fantastic. Good job.
So I'd imagine just the sheer bulk of what you've had to do the last few years, particularly around the water, the industry, I don't know how you quantify it, but to compare that to other years, it'd be quite a step up on projects, I'd have thought.
Yeah, in terms of value, most definitely the last few years have been a lot higher than what was done historically. I see there's sort of jumped 12, 13 to 25. Maybe it's been impressive, but it's been good. So.
I mean, just through the chair, I know we talk about it every month, because it always kind of, but this is such a good way to present the information to us, so the grade off pieces are the 100%ers and that these projects still in action and in time they'll be grade off as well. I think that's a really good way if the members of the public saw and viewed this report, they'd actually get a really good sense and of the intense workload, I guess, that you undertake on our behalf. So it's all pretty good, really. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paragraph 65.
I'm done. Yeah.
Just a question on 65, Kaiwara 575, that's the full treatment.
The Blythe, that was the water treatment plant, it's in operation.
I'm just trying to work out how many how many people that supply 30 houses on the whole. I'm just trying, I'm just going up as well. Where it covers.
On the Blythe?
No, the Kaiwara.
Yeah, something like that,
Yeah, which is, starts getting quite expensive per per person, there's not many people actually on the scheme. It's mainly not over 90% stock water. Be well over that. It's just, I'm just showing up how much treatment plants cost for the number of people that
Yeah, I guess through you, Mr. Chair, this is one of the reasons why back in 2015 we went district-wide on water, because we knew that the impacts would be disproportionate on those very small schemes. So that's why we've gone district-wide.
But then we look at our whole district, our population, and our whole cost of our water treatment, and you think it's quite expensive.
Yep.
It's only.
Sorry, I was just trying to tie comments I wrote last night back to the appropriate page. There was just a couple that popped up, this one explaining. Page 71, again, the Springs Tourism Fund, key tourism project. I just wondered what that was, or how it comes to be, how it fits in with our the tourism, with our tourism group, or whether this is a separate funding and a separate pathway for doing things, or I just hadn't seen that term before. I was just wondering what and how it fits.
So that's one that I believe the community board have put in there, and it's with them to deal with.
Yes, the hub signage for the mountain stuff.
All right.
And that fund is funded from royalties from the Bungie operation.
Right. Okay, no, I'm fine with that. I just wasn't quite sure if it was a separate, how that one worked.
So just to bear in mind that this entire list is essentially the neat capital list that Jason gets you to approve every year or every LTP. So Dan won't be necessarily across every single thing on this, but this is just a list for you to see, that you can see things that just get ticked off. Yet again, more volumetric stuff to say, this is all this work is going on in the background. So you're kind of the end of your part?
Yep.
It's probably not to do with you, but it's page 69 around the demolition of the buildings, Premier South and everything. I raised the topic earlier on. I was up there yesterday, and I just happened to be. And one thing I noticed was the huge trees there, particularly the pine trees, and the development was happening over the fence, and I would just made me nervous that we had a situation in Amberley where I'll put it any time, Hamish.
So I've been talking with the developers at Redbarn Developments about those trees. Unfortunately, a lot of those pine trees are protected under the district plan. And so I have to get a resource consent to knock them down. They've reached the end of their life as pine trees. You can tell by the loss of apical dominance that they're no longer growing. But there's a blanket rule in the district plan that those trees, including the pine trees, are protected or significant trees. So it requires a resource consent to cut them down.
Yeah, because to me it raised the question, because you did right, some of them are, they start to die and bits fall off and all the rest, but they're massive. And the problem we had here with people putting houses underneath and then arguing that the trees were going to go, these ones are 10 times the size of those ones.
So there's quite a bit of reserve space below those trees. So they're unlikely to pose a hazard to houses, but they will pose a hazard to users of their reserve.
Yeah, I wondered, there's a footpath behind them.
So there's the Crawford walkway that runs behind there. The plan is that that will move out more and wind through the reserve a little bit more. But obviously there's bridge structures in that walkway, and they're at risk from those trees should they come down.
Yeah, I just wondered how, because there's a big billboard up about new development coming there, and that was my thought. Well, if we can't do something with them now, then surely we can't build within the full radius of them or whatever, it's gonna come back to haunt us. And of course, that all tied in with while the space is empty and while the houses aren't there, just to tag that, you know, which you obviously across, that, yeah, we're gonna have to do something there along the way before we get caught in a really awkward situation with access and buildings below. Because there's some magnificent trees in there, and I wouldn't imagine that it's not a clear fell situation, but some experts are gonna have to have a look and decide, well, if you took out pine trees and opened it up, would the wind take the risk, you know, all those questions, but I just sort of thought needs a tagging.
I've had numbers report done.
Yeah. That's good. Okay, so I at the start of the meeting, I was quite sure where to go with that, but it sounds like something we don't need to be doing any further with at this stage. It's already in hand.
Yeah, although it does highlight an issue with the way that we manage significant trees in our district planning process. Where people can just this tree significant and something that ends up in the plan. I would have thought that pine trees are not particularly significant in Hammer Springs in particular.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I know there's different types of pine trees, but I understand there's a radiatus. Yeah, so I think it is beholden on us as a council to look really carefully, particularly when we put a blanket this area, every tree in it's protected. You know, and the arborists said they're not dangerous currently, but they have reached the end of their life. So you know, it's a really difficult one, because if they're dangerous, of course you can take them out as of right, but given they're not currently dangerous, you either have to wait till they become dangerous, take them out, or actually get a resource consent. I think a bit silly.
Oh, well, that sounds like everyone's way ahead of me on that one, so that's great, not unusual. Any further questions for Dan?
Just a comment really, just sort of reinforcing Hamish's comments about, and we've had some of these discussions before about notable trees and the added cost and how they qualify as a criteria, and whether we look at it hard enough. And I think there was a bit of work done on that some years ago, but if not, then it's probably something that we should do. It's those things that add the extra costs to some of the projects that need to get done. I'm not saying we shouldn't have it, because there are notable trees that are worth, but maybe we just need to have something around it.
Well, that's kind of where I was going, was that if we any bigger projects coming up, you know, one of them is the cost of demolition there, and I thought, well, maybe it's prudent at around that stage that you look, if any of this work has to be done, then maybe it'd be a good time to do it. But sounds like that's all in here. Dan, thank you very much. And as I say, you know, you've got through a fair pile of stuff in the last wee while, so well done to you and the team. We're looking pretty good on it.
Excellent, thank you very much.
Thanks,
So now I think all I need to do is to move with all of that. So I wouldn't forget. If I can have a move in a second of all of those reports are received. Yeah.
Aye. I do that sometimes too.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think we've all seen mine. Something else?
Anything else? Relationship 50.
I was attempting to get something on there, but no, it's all been better.
Have you not got anything you can put on your action sheet?
Not for that. Not for that.
Fair enough.
All good. So what happens now? We've got half, oh, it's going to be half an hour.
Close the meeting, Rob.
Yeah.
I thought we did it. Okay, I'll close the meeting. We've got to stretch